was wrong to say I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through colored glass, time rolls on enough to let me move on past, but every little now and then it creeps on back to shade my smile.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this May 14th, 2024. Tonight on Vestiges, we have returning guest Natasha Venter here to discuss triggers, psychological triggers, and how they affect us emotionally as well as spiritually. It should be a very interesting time. I know that this is a big topic right now. There seems like everybody's triggered about something. I'm triggered right now about technology. I'll tell you why in a minute. It's a miserable situation. Anyway, maybe we can find the solution tonight. I'm hoping that I do. Don't go away. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, and my co-host is here with me, Jamie Wolf. How you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing good. It's been an interesting day.
Has it? Yes. I mean, actually had to do some stuff over at the new church. I had to go over to show the insurance company the inside. They needed to see the inside for some reason. I don't know. I told them about our efforts with the county to get the special use permit done, and we're still, waiting for our date and our signs and all that good stuff.
Government wheels of, yeah.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Hurry up and wait.
Yes. I am getting some kind of feedback off of your microphone, I think. I don't know. Everything's kind of messed up tonight.
Yeah, we've had a trying first half hour, y'all.
We have, and I don't know. Can you guys hear that? Let me know in the chat if you can hear.
Can you copy me?
There seems like there's a little bit of background noise.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Do you hear it, or is it just on mine?
I do not hear it.
You do not hear it. Okay, so hopefully
of course,
maybe
I'm half
it's
deaf in
not.
one ear, so
Hopefully it's not going over the airwaves. We'll find out. If somebody could let me know if it sounds okay. It's Jamie's mic. Okay, it is your mic. Okay.
Interesting.
So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna unplug you real quick, and we're gonna see how that works. Okay.
All right.
No, it's not your headset. It's your microphone.
Okay.
Check to see if there's something. Is there something on the? It's still happening. I don't know what's going on.
It's my fault.
It is definitely your mic, because when you talk, that's when we hear it.
Yeah, I haven't touched the mic.
All right, I'm going to try a different.
Now.
Turn it. All right.
Hello.
Yeah, it's still coming. It's still happening. All right, we're going to. Give me a second. I'm going to take a quick break here just to try to fix this.
We'll be right back.
We are not alone. They are among us. As the skies light up, they believe we are blissfully unaware.
You didn't have any issues on the
But this activity by non-human extraterrestrial technology is capturing the attention of humans.
Okay. Let's see if this fixed it. Go ahead, Jamie.
How do you all copy me
Yep,
now?
it's fixed.
Lima
Okay.
Charlie? Okay, good.
Once again, if we had an engineer, we wouldn't have
We
to.
have you.
Yes.
Technology hates me.
But having to host the show while
Yeah.
doing all that is not ideal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think everything is fixed for the moment. We've been having issues. So if the moderators, our wonderful moderators out there, thank you so much for being with us tonight. If they could be so kind as to go into all the other platforms and make sure that the title for this show, which is Triggers with Natasha Venter, is correct. I noticed that on YouTube, it was changed to the preseason test. I don't know where that even came from or how that even happened. But I think that's been fixed back. I think it's right on the Nickelodeon Network. I can't see what it says on Instagram. I think it's right on Facebook, and we know it's wrong on Twitter.
Yeah.
But we can't change it once it goes to Twitter. So if somebody could just go on anywhere that you see the wrong title, if you could just mention it in the chat that it's actually not a preseason test. It's a real episode 12, I think.
Yes, episode 12.
Okay. All right. YouTube is good. Okay. Twitch is wrong. Yeah. So put it in Twitch. I know I've had a feeling Twitch would be wrong. This is just a constant issue we're having. And Jamie watched me go step by step
Yes, I did.
and intricately back and forth. And as I would scroll down, it would slowly change the title back to the wrong one. It was the craziest thing. And this
Gremlins.
happens all the time. So
Gremlins.
if, previous episodes, if you've noticed that it's been wrong, it's because that's what's happening. I can't explain it. I don't know where that's coming from, how that even happens. When computers first came out, they didn't do shit like this. So it's either programmers have gotten a whole lot worse, or the technology it thinks it's smart when it's not.
Finicky.
It's probably a little bit of both. But it was actually changing it. It was changing the title as I was actually moving through to make sure each one was correct. It would change it back after I'd fix it. And then as soon as I hit to go live, it would change it again. And how do you fix it? Once you go live, you can't change it. I mean, you can change it in certain platforms like Facebook and YouTube, but you can't change it on like Twitch or Instagram, to my knowledge. I don't know how to do that. I haven't figured out a way to do that. Anyway, so we have got our liturgical libation tonight. This is a new
needed.
one. Yeah, it's very much needed,
Very much needed.
because it's very frustrating.
Scotch makes everything better.
Yeah. So what do we have for tonight? This is actually mine, but you can introduce
This is
us.
a Glenlivet Fusion Cask single malt Scotch whiskey.
Yeah, Fusion Cask.
It has been aged in rum and bourbon barrels.
Yeah.
And just real quickly, it says on the nose, you should smell orange, vanilla custard, caramel, coconut, and zest of lemon. Outstanding. On the palate, we should have notes of juicy apricot and peach, fresh apples, toffee, covered bananas, and subtle cinnamon spice. This sounds right up my alley.
Yes.
The finish should be sweet and smooth with enduring notes of orange. And I love anything with orange infused in it. So I'm actually looking forward to this one.
I think you're going to like it.
And it is 80 proof.
Yeah, it's a standard.
Is this one of the tops up
Just
here?
take up the top. Yep.
Nice, pretty color.
Yep. So we found this one. I think this was a release from just a month ago. I think it was just a new release from about a month ago. Perfect. Thank you. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a Glenlivet. You can tell
Glenlivet
it's
doesn't put out.
It's
crud,
got that Glenlivet. If you want to come over and reach your hand out,
Salute, Tracy.
is here behind the scenes.
Ooh, good nose.
There we go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Y'all.
You smell that wood?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I could sit and sip on this for quite a while.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that I'm gonna have to find one of those.
I think Total's the only one that I've seen it at.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, us folks on the south side, we don't get all the good stuff. I live in the sticks.
It's very true.
Yeah. Good choice, Bishop. Good choice.
Yeah, we saw it. We saw it when we went.
Glenlivet,
hunting.
you did it again.
It's a good one. It's definitely a good one. Joining us from Australia, we have Father Chris Yates. How you doing tonight, Father?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good morning,
Yes.
everybody.
Good morning. Sips
Good
for
morning
you.
to you. Good night to us.
Yeah, it's a nice sunny day here, and because we've kind of moved towards winter, it's kind of perfect.
Yeah,
So
you get that nice weather.
it's yeah, that's right. So no, going okay. Not so far having any of the computer issues you're having, so that's good news. We did, of course, have we had the federal budget last night, so we're all waking up to the pork barreling that's been going on. They're trying
Plenty
to
of
buy
that.
us off for votes. So
Plenty of that.
I'll have to write a review on it later on this afternoon. So I've got numbers and figures and concepts swimming around my brain today.
Oh yeah,
boy.
yeah. Well, I'm probably doing the same thing too, because it's been just one of those hectic days where probably not the best day to prepare oneself for a show this evening, but I'll get myself there eventually.
Given that the show's on triggers, it's probably perfect.
It really is, because
Right.
it's like I'm feeling triggered right now. I think Natasha's going to have
We're
to
all
help
gonna have
me.
a group therapy session.
I'm going to need it by the time we're done here. Oh my goodness.
It'll be good by the time we're done. Everybody will be happy.
I really don't mind, an occasional glitch or something like this, but the sheer regularity of the problems that happen, and I'm fairly competent with technology.
Definitely more than I am.
I would say probably more than a lot of people, and so
It's definitely getting much harder to work on, because I was the same, right? I was kind of ahead of the curve on technology, but it's just like with cars, like you can't fix your own car now because they've made it that
Well,
way.
it's just
Exactly.
not smart anymore. It's like they call things like smartphones. It's like, what's smart about a phone these days? They're stupid. They make decisions. They change your words. They make you sound like an idiot when you're typing something out, because it's like, oh no, you could not have possibly meant that. Let me change it to this. And it's like you don't even ask permission. And that's what's happening with our simulcasting service here, which I'm about ready to dump. And if I didn't have so many, if we didn't have so much activity with it, I'd probably get rid of it by now. But if we get rid of it, then we just go back to streaming on just YouTube, and that doesn't really bode well for the numbers. But I can already see that our numbers are being affected tonight, because people are logging into these other platforms and they're seeing a preseason test, and so they don't check out the show, and so it's definitely being reflected because it sent out the wrong title, and that's the kind of thing that just irritates the hell out of me, because there's no reason for it.
I think it's a mixture between a genuine, as the internet has swollen, there's a genuine need to sort of to keep spying away, and other nations want to bring things down and influence us, and also added to that the sort of the pop-up industries that come with this. I mean, I remember when YouTube was launched, there were no adverts on it. Do you remember?
Oh, I do. Well, I mean, that was not long ago. That wasn't that long ago. But to be fair, when YouTube was launched, you could only put like a 10-minute video on there. You couldn't stream.
I'm not against it. I'm just saying that's what's happened. It's kind of as industries come in, and then if you want to generate an industry, then you create a problem, and then you say, "I've got the fix. Pay me."
But the reality is, you don't have to have those ads. It's the people that are running the channels that put the ads on there. You go to the Nicolayan. Go to @Nicolayan on YouTube, you'll never see a commercial, because we don't run them. We have not monetized this channel, and that might actually be why our numbers are struggle sometimes. The algorithm struggles because YouTube knows it can't make any money off of us. So maybe if we did monetize it, we'd see a change in those numbers. I don't know. I mean, I don't really want to monetize, particularly for live streaming. Because apparently when you monetize a video for a live stream, it just cuts off halfway without any control, and then it just runs an ad in the middle of the live broadcast. So that's another reason why I don't really want to monetize the channel, but I could monetize the archives. I could. I just have never done that. I don't know if that would help the algorithm or not. I really don't, but I'm just kind of down on technology this evening. Coming from Tennessee, we have Brandon Milam, probably to cheer us up with some good questions, right, Brandon?
Sure. Yeah.
what he did. He logged in early. We gotta give him some brownie points. He logged in early to solve last week's problem.
We might have solved that.
Well,
but,
I mean, I don't know. We'll find out. But he called in to the switchboard, and because you know how people for the last couple of episodes have been saying they can't hear us on the phones. Well, he called into it and he could hear us just fine. He said it sounded just like a normal phone call. So I don't understand. That's the same thing that happened when Jamie called into.
Yep.
We haven't been able to duplicate this thing that people are reporting. But we've had 3 people now call in, couldn't hear us. So I don't know what's going on with that. Hopefully tonight it is resolved. So far, everything's working in that department at least. So thank you, Brandon, for that. You have anything good to drink tonight, I hope?
Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
I actually know.
Capri Sun.
I hinted at.
Capri Sun.
He's such a young fella,
Chocolate milk.
There might be something in the Capri Sun. A little rum,
No, I got Kool-Aid in my fridge. But
okay.
Water.
Ooh, eternal.
Okay.
So mineral water?
I have never had it before.
I've never heard of it.
Never heard of it either.
Cool.
I've never even heard of that one.
So
be careful. You might have unicorns and fairies fly out of that
Yeah,
thing.
it's true.
Yeah.
Here he goes. And he's going to give us.
We're good.
All right. Tell
Nice
us how
and
it
cold,
is. Is it
at
like an
least.
alkaline water or is it some kind of like spring
Probably
water?
fortified water.
it's like a naturally alkaline
Oh,
spring.
Yeah.
water.
nice. What's the pH
From
on
the
it? Does
fountain
it
of
say?
eternal youth. He's actually 80 years old.
Yeah. So there's something to this, I think. Yeah.
The pH. The pH is between 7.8 and 8.2.
Okay, so it's
Okay,
not
that's good.
too alkaline, but it's in the alkaline. It's moving in that territory. I drink a 9.5, and it's wonderful. It's actually wonderful. I do find that it has some kind of benefits. It really does. So, okay, let's get started with the questions from the ether and get this show on the road now that everything seems to be stabilized.
God willing.
Yeah, God willing.
Right. Are these the right questions? Oops.
If they're not, say them anyway.
The first one is from Benji, at least the one that you sent me. Do I need to send them back to you?
Yes. I don't know how that happened. I only had the questions from last week.
All right,
but I
well,
sent them to
Well,
you.
luckily,
Where do you want them? Do you want them in the chat or do you want them in email?
Oh, you can do chat.
Okay, I'll just put them in the chat here.
Oh,
For you.
it's the solar flare things, I guess.
we could. Yeah.
I don't know. Are we still? Oh wait, the message
Yeah.
is too long. I can't send it in email. I mean, I'm saying I can't send it in chat, so it's going to have to go. So let me go back to the email that. What a night! My God, what a night!
The first one's an interesting question, but I think it can be easily answered.
It is easily answered.
Put it to rest real quick.
It's an easy one. Here, let me go ahead and.
I'm going to keep the lid off of this box of scotch because it's going to be one of those nights, I think.
You think so?
Okay. All right, I found them.
Oh, you found them. Okay, because
now.
I mean, I can't even find them now. All right, here we go.
Okay, so the first question comes from Benji. Does Lucifer have the ability to create?
No. The absolute reality of the demonic is that it's deprived of the faculties of creation. It doesn't have access to those things. So the reason that the demonic is problematic for people, and actually the only reason why, is because they need us to do anything. Evil does not have the ability to create anything. It can't produce anything. It can only manipulate. And the reason it manipulates us is because we are A, vulnerable, and B, made in God's image. And being made in God's image means that we have access to the faculties of creation. So if you can make the faculties of creation go bad, which is what evil tries to do through things like temptation and everything else, then it can use, or I should say misuse, our natural instincts and our natural abilities to create horrors and evil and to proliferate evil, and that's exactly what ends up happening. So, but no, and we're talking about Lucifer here in the archetypal Christian, Judeo-Christian theological sense. So we're talking about the devil in the theological sense, and no, the devil cannot create anything. Father, anything you'd like to add to that one?
No, I mean, it's just the antithesis of creation. And it's it's why the devil is so self-loathing, because he can only destroy, he can't create, and therefore he's utterly dependent on God to create things, and so he's dependent on the very person who he hates, and that's the eternal self-loathing and unforgiveness and hatred that he tempts us with to draw us in, so that he can destroy us.
Yes, Benji, that goes for all of them. He says lesser, greater demonic.
Those
demons,
not
those
fallen.
not
We're talking
fallen.
about fallen angels.
If you're talking about, we're talking about fallen angels. Now, if you're talking about like what is considered to be the more extended concept of a demon, which is not necessarily an evil being, but more of a nature spirit or some kind of elemental or something like that, which could have different orientations, just like in Dungeons and Dragons, where you can have like chaotic good and
chaotic good, chaotic neutral.
I mean, it's really kind of a thing. It's actually kind of a thing. There's neutral spirits. There's benevolent spirits. There's malevolent spirits.
I think we're all chaotic good in our troop, aren't we?
I think something like that. Yeah, chaotic good maybe. And so essentially, when you start talking about these types of elementals or nature spirits or other forces in the cosmos that are aligned one way or the other, anything that is aligned to the creative principle can access to a certain degree the powers of creation. Anything that is aligned to what is I refer to metaphysically as the reabsorption principle can only work towards reabsorption or destruction. Okay, so we're unique. Human beings are unique, and that's what makes us in God's image, not because we look like him, but because we have the ability to both create and destroy. We're one of the only forces in the cosmos that can actually do both, and that's unique. That's that's in fact something that God has never created before and never done again. It's really exclusive to what we refer to as humanity. So we have the ability to do both, even though we are initially aligned, honestly, to be creators as well. And when you look at what people consider to be good and evil, philosophically speaking, when you break it down to the lowest common denominator, what you find is that we tend to like things that are productive and efficient and conducive to some end, which is all creation like, and we tend to loathe things that are destruction. We don't like loss, we don't like death, we don't like disappointment. These are all destructive feelings, right? I mean, they're all about it all has to deal with ultimately some kind of force of destruction or reabsorption in some way. So,
well, and actually, we say that if people reach the point where they appear to enjoy those things, that's disordered.
It is, yes.
Like that's the nature of a disorder.
Look at.
We say it's disordered because it's destroying order.
Like serial killers, for example. Murderers. Even rape is a destructive use of the creative faculty of human sexuality.
It's a mockery of it.
So it is. It's a destructive it's a destructive application of something that's supposed to be creative and good and holy. So, evil, that's all it can do. And so it can manipulate, though. The way that evil gets things done is by manipulating human beings who have access to the powers of creation. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic that almost is its own show. Some of these questions that we get for the ether actually could make really good full episodes at some point, and kind of discussing the nature of evil in that sense might be beneficial at some point in the future.
We can revisit that in the fall.
Maybe for the fall season. I think it would be a good idea. So there you go, Brandon. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but that's our answer.
No, I think I'm pretty good with that answer. I hope Benji's good with that as well.
Okay, good.
So the next question comes from April. She asks, if myth is more real than reality, what of folklore and stories of hauntings passed down through generations?
Okay, so folklore folklore can become true over time. Like any kind of mythological story, it has the ability to develop a sense of reality as it continues to be interacted with or passed on in some form or fashion, but not to the same level of sophistication that a myth does, where myths can sometimes be so old and so universally pervasive that no one even remembers where they came from. They're so primordial in the sense that, you know, there's no real clear origin point historically. It's almost as if they've always been. And so myths, which have been built into our reality over the course of thousands of years, are essentially reflections of ineffable philosophical truths. And so folklore is kind of in that same vein, but a very simplified version of it. I would say it's basically just the simplified, or you might even call it the zygote of a myth. You know, it could turn into one maybe thousands and thousands and thousands of years from now, but it's really only applicable to, usually folklore is only applicable to the culture in which it currently exists, and that changes and it falls out of favor. And you know, there's think of things like old wives' tales. We know about some of the things that have become part of the folklore of bad luck, like black cats crossing your path, walking under a ladder, breaking a mirror. These are common ones in our culture today, but I can guarantee you 10,000 years from now, these are probably not going to be folklore conditions that anyone knows or remembers. I mean, unless there's some kind of document that's uncovered, and then they might look at it and be like, I don't know what they're talking about. Something about mirrors being broken and, you know, 7 years bad luck or whatever it is, you know. So it's not the same as a myth. Now, when you start talking about a myth, like, well, I mean, look at the, even how Jesus takes on the mythical status of the archetype itself in the God that dies to give of himself so that his people may take on divinity. And this is actually a mythological condition that existed long before Christianity. I mean, you see it in the stories of Osiris. You see it in some of these very ancient stories of that gods would give of themselves divine power to humans that would then take on that divinity. And it's not, of course, a perfect parallel, and Jesus is the first one perhaps to actually come down here and do it in reality as a physical thing. But it is still a mythos that is reflected in ancient, that goes back to the very beginnings. You can even say the Jungian archetypes, the hero, the wise old man, the eternal child, the great mother, the shadow, the trickster, are all mythological beings that exist in each and every one of us and are accessible through each and every one of us and have become part and integrated into every single story that's ever been told. You'll find these same archetypes in every single story, every single one. I mean, Star Wars has them all.
Yeah.
Star Wars has every single one of those. Obi-Wan Kenobi is the wise old man, right? Luke Skywalker is the hero. You could say that Darth Vader is the shadow. You could say that his mother, Anakin Skywalker's mother, sort of like the great mother, that sort of gives birth, but sometimes despite her compassion, darkness can infiltrate, and the hero goes to the shadow, and it's just archetypal stories. They're mythologies, but they convey ineffable philosophical truths that, regardless of whether or not they're actual historical stories, is not the point of them. What is the point of them is that they convey something that is more true than even history itself. Father Chris has talked about this one several times before. I'm sure you have some thoughts there, Father, on that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about the Jungian archetypes. You've done that. I think also it's a bit like the phenomenon that a human being, if they're shown an image, if there's anything that can look like a face, we'll see it.
Yeah.
It could be just a load of dots, but we'll see two eyes, a nose, and a mouth, right? We've got that.
Sure.
It's built into us, and I think that's true of mythologies as well. In other words, you actually don't need to read, like, no one needs to read Jung's archetypes to know what they are.
Right.
Like we can see them because it's so deeply related to the human. I mean, that was Jung's point, right?
Before you read anything that he ever wrote, you already are intimately familiar with each and every one of these archetypes. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it so profound, I think.
Yeah, and why it's so important that he doesn't invent this. He's identifying it.
Yeah, he's figured it out.
And then and explaining it in a way that's decipherable and useful in his case, in the case of counseling people and what have you, and therapists use it everywhere. But people have always used this. The ordained therapists to the priests, and we use these archetypes, these myths. We use the scriptures. All of them contain these super truths.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well said. Super truths. I like that. All right, Brandon. There's the answer to that one.
I really liked that answer because what happens, April clarified in her question, some places we go to investigate, they always have a story of like a lady in white or a person that's accused of witchcraft. And so that's really where her question came from, is what are these?
Yeah, and I mean, they are, I mean, it's mostly folklore. Of course, sometimes folklore is based on something that's happened and it becomes sort of like a larger than life story. So it's occasionally they can be related to more identifiable singular events.
I think everybody's hometown has a story about a lady in white. Mm-hmm. So if you have a graveyard in your hometown, you've probably got a story about a lady in white.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah. And of course these concepts could be the result of certain pre-existing conditions like we were referring to earlier of elementals or nature spirits and things of that nature can sometimes be fixated on a particular location where people that live in proximity to that location and have experienced anomalous events around that location, could create a folklore based upon it, and that gets sort of lost into the human database and comes back as some kind of legend or whatnot. Even urban legend is kind of like that too. Mm-hmm. Do you remember those urban legends that they're not as, you don't hear much about it as much anymore, but do you remember the one where there's an urban legend of a guys driving down a deserted highway and a car approaches with out their lights on and they just flash the high beams at them.
High beams, yeah.
He waits for you to flash the high beams at them to let them know, hey, your lights are off. And as soon as you do that, he turns around and follows you and kills you. I don't think that ever really happened, but it is
But we did have a thing when I first came back in country from being stationed in Korea and got to Fort McPherson in Georgia. Part of our in-country briefing is like, welcome back to the United States. We're in a rough part of Atlanta, and this is what's going on. And the gangs were doing that. They were flashing people that are
in England too.
But was it the urban legends popularity that made people start to do it, or do you think it was, or
but
do
it
they
was
start
actually
it?
happening? I'm sure its source came from that.
Yeah.
But
and I think
it was
this
actually
happens,
a real
Life
thing.
imitating art.
Yeah, of course, and that's kind of
Like, welcome
how
back to the
these things happen.
States. We know you missed us. By the way, don't do this. Yeah, great. Welcome to Atlanta.
So there you have it. Okay, what's our next one?
So the third question is, how did we come to the conclusion that Emperor Nero was the beast in Revelation? Were there extra sources outside the Bible that confirmed it?
No,
It was written.
and the reason why there wouldn't be any information that would clearly state that is because writing that down in any kind of way that was plain speech was pretty much like the ancient equivalent of treason, where you would have been executed. The whole point
be in code.
of Revelation was to write it in an apocalyptic allegorical code that people that were into those apocalyptic communities could understand the language underneath the language. So it was all, a symbolic sort of diction, you might say, that contained hidden messages that could be given from one community to the other to talk about something that was going on. And so, they would apply various codes, numerology, gematria, various other methodologies that would be applied in these works to be able to safely talk about politics in an age where talking badly about your leaders could get you killed. Today, at least in the first world, at least in no one's taken that right away yet. But that's not something they enjoyed back in the ancient time. And to speak badly or to even refer to the Roman emperor as a beast would have been an executable of a crime. So they wouldn't have talked about that openly. So no, that's not where it comes from. It comes from basically various prominent biblical scholars that drew this conclusion by their ability to analyze the historical context of the document, conducting a textual analysis on the document, and then having a very complete understanding of early Jewish and Christian practices and how they looked at the world and how their perception of the world would have influenced the work that they wrote down. So it's interesting also to note that when you understand, how they calculate the number 666, which of course is like, everyone thinks it's the devil's number today, and how it would actually in Hebrew perfectly align mathematically to the name of Nero. It also works with the earlier number, the older number, 616.
The actual number.
The actual number, yeah. And it works for both of them. Nero applies to both 616 and 666, which I think tells me that, okay, they got it right. These scholars got it right.
Why you say this out there, they got 666 tattooed on you.
Yeah.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, joke's on you, because it wasn't 666. It was originally 616. The earliest documents say 616. But here's a good example of the earlier question in action.
Yeah.
This
I was going to
is
say exactly the same thing.
You ready? Yeah, it is. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, because essentially because often I suspect what may be behind the question is that things like this are often used as sort of predictive premonitions by certain evangelical groups, right? This is the sign of this, and this is the prediction of, whatever, the fall of America, or, things that were impossible to have predicted in the second century. But it is a kind of mythical archetype.
Yes.
And so, we've got what we were describing in the first part in action here in the book of Revelation, because you've got this description of politically and socially, theologically, philosophically, how empires rise and fall.
Yep.
And so we shouldn't be surprised that we see connections with what's happening now, because this is in fact an archetype.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, it is. It really is. And so, yeah, the most prominent biblical scholars will see it this way. Now, of course, there's going to be lesser known ones or armchair theologians that, of course, want to make it out to be like some kind of antichrist, some kind of devil, some kind of biblical prophecy that for our current time. And it's just not that. And I'm sure it's so disappointing to some of these people if they were to really sit down and understand that the book of Revelation is really not speaking about us at all. It's speaking about the early Christians and their struggle. And the reason it's included in the canon for us is that it still reflects the eventual hope, that Jesus returns, there's a new heaven, a new earth, and that in the end, evil loses and everything's restored to the perfection that was originally intended. And so it's really only those last parts of the book of Revelation that really give it any viability. I know that it was debated it was one of the, it almost didn't make it. It almost didn't even make it to the canon, because when they were evaluating whether or not it had any theological value, there was a lot of people that felt it didn't. This is just too confusing. It doesn't really add anything. But they liked that conclusion. They liked the fact that it did really speak very eloquently to the new heaven, the new earth, and that Jesus's words at the end, it kind of closes up the Bible very well. And, Jesus says, behold, I come quickly, or something to that effect, depending upon the translation you read. Because I can't resist a slight barb against the sorts that are saying, oh, this is a prediction of the Antichrist is coming, here's the sign, it's the Pope, or whatever they want to say. Of course.
I want to live in their Neverland, their Peter Pan world, where they think that there's not been Antichrist at work since the fall in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Are they not awake? Can they not see that?
Pick any century.
We're not waiting
several.
for that to be born. It's already here.
Yeah.
And of course also the antidote is already here as well.
Yes, of course. And that's what it's really all about. And so it just
here and to come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice way of just sort of bookending what became our canon of scriptures. But they're not speaking about us today. They're not events about today or something that's about to happen. That's all imaginary. It's all just armchair theologians getting ahead of themselves and not really understanding what they're reading. And unless you're an early Christian, it would be almost impossible to understand what Book of Revelation is talking about, which is why you have to depend upon scholars that made it their life to study this, so that you can depend upon their knowledge, since you're not going to be the one to go and do it. Unless you're willing to go out there and become a biblical scholar, a theologian, and really focus in on apocalyptic literature, which if you did this, you would learn that, no, these are not prophecies for today. Then you have no business talking about it in any other context, because that is the actual historical context. That's why we have these books, and unfortunately no other book in the Bible creates more issue.
It's a good illustration of why, because we frequently talk about what do the church fathers say about X, what, or Y.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we ask that question, because they are closer to the source.
Yeah.
And so it's just responsible kind of pastoral as well as theological habit to say, well, rather than me reading, one contemporary evangelical preacher and then reading the scriptures and then declaring authoritatively what it absolutely means and says, maybe some humility would tell you to look at what perhaps has been the consistent understanding, interpretation, application of this scripture from the earliest possible sources. And those earliest possible sources are the fathers.
It's lazy pastoral care. It's irresponsible pastoral care for any priest, pastor, whoever, to get up there, even an evangelist, even just a lay evangelist who wants to go out there and preach the word of God. It's irresponsible to take something like the Book of Revelation and repurpose it into some kind of end times. This is it. The end of the world. Nuclear war is coming. It's Putin, that's the Antichrist. It's Trump, that's the Antichrist. It's Obama, that's the Antichrist. It's everybody. It's whoever you don't like.
In my parishes, in the parishes, where I was first appointed as parish priest, the first thing I'd preach on for a series was the creed. That'd be the first thing I'd preach on, because I can't assume that that people understand the Christian faith at its core.
Yeah.
The second thing I preach on is the Gospels, normally the Gospel of Mark. Then I'd preach on the Gospel of John, and in connection with that, the Old Testament Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, after that, I'd then talk about the Psalms and the epistles. I never got round to preaching on Revelation, because it's the kind of sexiest that people want to read, because it's got all this evocative language in it.
Yes.
But it's actually amongst the least important things to understand. Like, there are way more important things to understand first.
Yep, absolutely. And they miss the real point of it all when they focus in on things like that. The Bible is it's not a book of tarot cards. It's not a crystal ball. And stop turning it into a fortune telling device. And because it's the Bible, it's okay. It's another type of superstition. So when people start creating, or converting, I should say, the book of Revelation into some kind of modern day prophecy, that is really a type of extreme superstition. And
it's intellectual ADD as well.
Yeah.
Well, because, when I say, actually you need to spend some time really digging into the Gospel of Mark, right?
Yeah.
And that can be quite boring and turgid.
Yeah.
But that's what you need to do in order to deepen your understanding of what the Christ event means. But intellectual ADD goes, but Revelation says all sorts of interesting, cool things. I saw a beast rising out of the water. I'd much rather read that. It pricks my interest.
Yeah.
Just because it pricks your interest doesn't mean it's good for you.
Right. Of course. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. So there you go, Brandon. I did notice that there's some questions coming in the chat that seem pretty interesting.
Marion had a good one.
Yeah, we've got another 10 minutes here before we get to the top of the hour and take our break before we start tonight's topic on triggers with our guests. So let's get to some of those questions. So why don't you read the Marion one, and we'll try to do our best with it.
Marion says you explained recently that when a person dies, their spirit is meant to be destroyed. Is the spirit different from consciousness, or is consciousness eternal, but the spirit is impermanent?
I would say consciousness is absolutely not eternal, because consciousness is a brain anomaly. So the brain doesn't survive the dying process, neither does consciousness. But awareness, of which consciousness is sort of a crude derivative, is fundamental to the cosmos itself. It is a property of the cosmos itself. Now, this is a metaphysical question, largely, although it does have some religious overtones. And I want to make sure, because the question's worded in such a way that might be confusing to some people. I'm not suggesting that a person that a spirit is intended to be destroyed. It wasn't. The intention behind the human reality, which is made up of a body, a spirit, and a soul, was always meant to be an eternal principle. It took on the properties of entropy, which we experience as death as human beings. That's how aging and death, I guess, sickness and death is all part of the entropic process for us. It took this on in the fall, but from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. And so the purpose of salvation is not to be forgiven because you're such a horrible person, as much as it's about being restored to that eternal perfection. That's what salvation's really about. The forgiveness of sins is incidental. In fact, in largely already done by the cross. Of course, we have to participate in that through reconciliation and all of that. But that's not the point here. The point is to be restored. That's what it's all about. And I think people miss that point, because they think when a non-Christian or a person that doesn't really like Christianity very much, or an atheist hears the talk about salvation, they immediately start to think that you're talking about, you're such a bad person and you need to be forgiven for being such a bad person, and God, and God's going to punish you if you don't. That's not salvation. Salvation is about being restored to perfection. And
this is the gravy now. I mean, this is absolutely this is my drug of choice. In the West, we tend to be very transactional. We're rationalist. We're transactional. So, and of course, Protestantism ends up, in a sense, there's nothing wrong with gazing at the cross. That's a good thing, right? But in a way, Protestants remain in the Eucharist. They're on Holy Thursday, and in the and for the rest of the time they're on Good Friday, and they forget about Easter Sunday. If it's all about sin, if it's all about the wager for sin, which it is as well, by the way. I'm not denying that.
Sure.
But if it's all about that, it can't explain why Jesus rises from the dead and with his wounded hand says, "Peace be with you." Because you're right. That tells you, yes, the point was to deal with sin and death on the cross, but it was to conquer death by death,
right?
To use and of course the Orthodox, that's their Easter anthem, right?
It is.
Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tomb bestowing life.
Yeah.
So the whole point of it's the passion and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, because the entire reason is theosis, is that God became a man that we might be like God again, and have that unity of purpose. And so these things that separate us within ourselves, spirit, mind, body, all of these things are unified in Christ. It's why it is a bodily resurrection. It's all things unified and brought together in the person of Christ, and through death and through the ugly destruction and bloody passion, we get this utter unity of purpose, renewal, and empowerment to live forever in perfection.
Yep. And so that's necessary prerequisite knowledge to answer the question that Marion posits here, because what we have to understand is that the intention is to have always been eternal. We made ourselves finite in the fall. That's the reason the fall is a problem. That's what original sin does. And it's not because they disobeyed God as much as when you work against the will of God, then bad things happen. Like you go from an immortal being to now a being that is capable of being destroyed, a fragile creature like we are now. That's the problem. We're being restored from that, though. That's the whole thing. So the answer to the question, look, from the ancient vantage point, okay, the spirit and the spirit was what animates. From the vantage point of an ancient Christian, the spirit is what animates, brings life to the body. Okay, so God breathes his spirit into us and we retain some of that and it becomes part of who we are. But at death, that returns to God. All right, but it doesn't stay with us. Any semblance of what we are as an individual ego is lost in death. Okay, so consciousness is largely all that. Awareness, though, is fundamental. So what really, in order to answer this question well, we have to move a little bit away from the more ambiguous language of Christianity and kind of adopt some of the more the more specific metaphysics of Buddhism, because I think it does a better job answering this question, honestly. And there's not a conflict. Don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise. The semantics make it look like it's in conflict, but the concepts are not in conflict. They both are basically saying the same thing. It's just Buddhism has a better metaphysical description here. And so the way Buddhism approaches this is to say that we don't really have a soul, but souls actually have us. It's the inversion of what we've been kind of taught to believe in the Western religious system. And in the East, they understand this a lot better. And it does perfectly apply when you understand the fall. Now, if you take on a pure, and you've heard me criticize this in recent episodes, in fact, but when you take on more of a Platonic view, which the Western Church did, Plato very much influenced the Western Church and the Eastern Church too. But the Western Church, I think, really took it far because, of course, Plato influenced Aristotle, and Aristotle was sort of the foundation to Thomas Aquinas, which became a larger than life doctor of the church and was sort of the foundation to our understandings of theology today. So when you understand that Plato taught that everybody was immortal by nature, the church adopted that one and kind of got away from the Jewish origin of it, which was, you were intended to be, but you're not anymore. That's the problem. That's why you need salvation. And salvation is what gives that back to you. But assuming you don't pursue salvation, well, then guess what? Then it's Sheol, as it always has been. That's where you have to understand how this is. So is Sheol annihilation? Well, it sort of is, and it sort of isn't, because there is still sort of the imprint of the individual there, but there's no life there. There's no, the Spirit of God is not present in that individual. Okay. Therefore, what's in Sheol are basically just, I think the Bible calls them the best shades. They really are. Absolutely. Little shadows of what once was, but not really anything anymore. However, the imprint's still there. So it's kind of like a footprint in the sand. Okay. You know that somebody walked there. You might even be able to identify, if it's a well-defined print, you might even be able to identify who it was. But the person's not there now. So death for the natural state of death, unless somebody does something about it, is going to be to become that imprint. Salvation brings us back to actual fundamental existence. And that's the difference. Now, Buddhism doesn't get into salvation, because salvation is not the point of Buddhism as much as it is realization. Realization takes us one even step further in a sense, but one could actually argue and surmise that Buddhism and Christianity are kind of talking about very similar things, very different ways. Anyway, we're going to take our first break here, and when we come back, we will have Natasha Venter to talk about triggers. Should be very interesting, and you don't want to miss this, and we'll have time for your questions and everything else in the next 2 hours, so don't go anywhere.
to let you go, to let you go. So why is it so hard to let you go, to let you go? So why is it so hard to let you go? Let you go. So why is it so hard to let you go? Let you go.
Welcome back, everyone, to Vestiges After Dark. On this second hour, we will bring on our fantastic returning guest, Natasha Venter, to talk to you about triggers. These have deep-rooted causes, I think. They have metaphysical origins as well as psychological and emotional ones. In fact, when you really break down the entire process, you'll find that it's all really wrapped up into one thing, with multiple different effects. And we're going to talk about some of those. We're going to talk about solutions to these things, a world that is in desperate need of that solution, when we come back here. And then we'll be taking your questions in the third hour. So don't go anywhere. Much exciting information to come. Okay, so let's get this show on the road here by bringing back on. But for those of you who might be new to Vestiges this season, we are having returning a guest, Natasha Venter, who's an extraordinary intuitive guide with a lifelong soul, calling, and natural-born psychic abilities. Natasha has dedicated her life to helping others navigate the often tumultuous journey of life. She possesses a unique ability to travel effortlessly through lifetimes, dimensions, and the Akashic records, making her a true bridge between worlds. Natasha is renowned for her gift as a dimensional and animal communicator, as well as a reader of energies. Her compassionate approach has provided solace and guidance to countless individuals, particularly in times of grief and other significant life challenges. With over 30 years of experience, Natasha has honed her skills in providing insightful readings, healing meditations, life coaching, and feng shui consultations. Her deep intuition and extensive expertise have made her a beacon of light for those seeking clarity, healing, and spiritual growth. Natasha's work is characterized by her loving assistance and unwavering support, helping clients to overcome obstacles and embrace the potential for new opportunities. Without any more delay, let us welcome back Natasha Venter to the show. How you doing tonight, Natasha?
Well, thank you for letting me be here. It's always, you always put a smile on my face when
Always
I'm here.
good to see you.
You do the same, actually.
you.
This was a rocky start this way. It was really frustrating and stressful there. So I'm happy to have you on because you do tend to, you calm us all down,
Bring us down to center.
I appreciate that. I get told that all the time. Natasha, you haven't been to my area of the building, or you haven't been here, or you haven't been there, or like when I come back from a trip, my husband, it's like a flat tire, and I sometimes have to pump him back up, because it's just, I guess it's my Mars is in Cancer. So it's like everything is, to me, is like, the God of War is in a hug, type of thing.
See, my Mars is in Aries, and that doesn't bode well for me at all. So.
Now I have an Aries rising, which helps me get a little fire into myself.
Oh, there you go. See, it works. I try to, we try to keep it balanced, but so thank you so much for being with us tonight. So the subject is triggers, and this was an interesting one. I like to give, returning guests an opportunity to bring on or bring to the show whatever they would like to talk about. And you had mentioned this one, and it really seemed fascinating. I know that this world is it seems to be a society that is in perpetual state of being triggered. So, and it doesn't matter who you are or what your ideologies are. Everyone seems to be upset with everyone else. So I think this is a much needed show. So do you agree with that?
Oh, I totally do, because that's the thing is that, we're all going through this year as a big shakeup with our belief systems.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what you believe in, but, I believe in divine love, whatever that is. It doesn't matter what it's named. I believe in divine love. But our humanness, people forget in the spiritual awakening, whatever you believe in, we're still human. We still have human experiences. We still have human past experiences. We have human, all these human things that we carry along like baggage that ends up being replayed in a lot of our things that we're going through in the day-to-day walk, like you being triggered with the technology. So
He was, trust me. He was.
Yeah, but you did it well. I was very impressed. I could tell that you were working on your belief system while you were being triggered.
I was.
And so with that it's like, how do we do this being human? And many of us stand in, the reaction instead of interaction. And when we can step our practice, and I'm going to call it practice, into interaction, it's amazing how we can take those life experiences out of being so triggered into, oh, okay, this is how I can negotiate it a little bit better.
I like making that distinction, like you said. I mean, it is, people are in this state of perpetual reaction, and that's not the place to be. I mean, it's okay. I think we're emotional beings, right? All of us have an emotional center, and so we're going to respond. And you live in an entropic universe, so a lot of those emotional experiences are going to be negative ones, and so we're going to have momentary outbursts. We're going to have moments of weakness. We're going to feel that, and it's going to affect us sometimes adversely. However, how we respond to that, the interaction part, is really where the magic is, So it's like, it's okay. And I tell people this in pastoral counseling too. It's okay to have, be angry at God. It's okay. Have that catharsis if you need it, but reel yourself back in. After you've had a moment to really stop and think about it, then bring yourself back in. So I think we need to start there. So, what is the relationship between the emotional and psychological triggers and how they interact with us spiritually? Let's start with that point.
So what I have an understanding of is that with our spiritual self, we always want to be better. We always want to think that we're better. But really, our spiritual work is when we're in the trenches. Yeah. When we're getting those knowings, and that's when, I've always talking with the angels and everybody, all the spirit, even the star beings that I do, they say us humans have this great perspective in this lifetimes is being human and having the emotions we do.
Yes.
There's not very many planets that I hear from that have this ability to be so emotionally based. And our souls go through such a big growth in this lifetime of, collecting of knowledge because of this, the triggers we get, for lack of better language, because those triggers are our experiences. I'm tired of lessons. Lessons can be a little hard. I like more experiences. So that's how I start changing my way, is how do I look at them? They're experiences for me. They're like a roller coaster. How can I negotiate them a little bit better? What is this here to teach me? What is this supposed to do with me? Why am I in this moment? And how can I negotiate it better? But we're all in this. So going into the spiritual and the humanness, it's a dual process. We can't have one without the other.
Right. And I think sometimes people try, they want to create these divisions where they can't exist, because, I really do think that even though the experiences of emotion, of the psychological, of the spiritual are different, they are all, I think, manifestations of the same ultimate reality. And how we, I think, connect with each one of those components really does mark where a person is at spiritually. So, I tend to find that a person who lives in the realm of being constantly reactionary is dealing with a type of spiritual, emotional, and psychological immaturity. They need to kind of grow up from that. So how do they do this? How do we help somebody that might be 40 or 50 years old and acting like a spiritual kindergarten kid? How do we help them to grow up, to be more mature in their spiritual life?
Well, to speak of this lovingly, I had to live this experience in my 33 years of marriage. My husband is now 12 years sober. So he's been drinking since he was 12 or 13 years old. So he in himself had to find a path in awakening himself in his belief system. It wasn't for me to put myself on him. And there was one time he said, Natasha, you taught me so much. And I said, you don't like to listen to me. So how can I teach you anything? Yeah. He said, you showed me. And showing him was sometimes how that he wanted to trigger me into something because of his lack of knowledge in working through his emotions, because of being drunk and high for so many years, that he didn't have a chance to practice it. So my having a flat face or a flat being, or just kind of sitting there going, and in myself, I'm saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. So I didn't get triggered into him, but I had to let him experience that moment where he was like, oh, that didn't work for me as well as it usually did in the time before. So with that, but so I didn't get triggered in. I had to have some mantra that was quick, simple, easy to go to, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. Whatever that came up to at that moment helped me to stay out of the other person's trigger, that was screaming, yelling, or putting on me, type thing, and so with that, even if it was me doing something and triggering myself, I had to figure out how to get some language to slow because that's the thing, is our nervous system is the first reaction. Yeah. Our nervous system is what reacts to a lot of things. Our nervous system says, am I safe or not safe? And then our mind is the thing that says, oh, my nervous system is working on it, so I need to react. So if you can kind of work on your mind and get some different language in it, that is safe, that I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, or whatever, that quick little thing. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be something that keeps you out of that trauma that we all get into. And I don't trauma is not a goofy thing or a fun thing. It's real. Drama is real. People bring drama into life because that's what they're used to. That's what they know. And so it's comfortable for them. But a lot of us don't want to live in that drama of other people, which is a trigger for us.
Oh, sure. I think I think misery likes company, or loves company. So, if a person's feeling bad, they want to make sure you feel bad too. You don't have a right to feel happy when I feel this way. You need to feel miserable along with me. They might not be consciously thinking that way, but I can guarantee you subconsciously, emotionally, they are thinking that way.
And their body language is telling you right away what's going on with them.
Yeah. It's true. It's similar. Your description there is very similar to something that I was taught years ago, for a different reason, not for triggers, but they can be used the same way. One of my early spiritual teachers taught me once a method from New Thought spirituality that I've always found to be very effective. There is the laws of attraction, and we've talked about them on this show before. And I tell people this all the time, if you're putting out constant nasty thoughts and hatred and anger and negativity, this is what the universe manufactures for you. So just keep sending it back to you. And so it just becomes this giant copy machine, so that your misery continues indefinitely, and you become the author of your own misery as a result of it. So negative self-talk from a psychological, now moving away from the spiritual for a moment and looking at it strictly just from a psychological vantage point, negative self-talk is sort of the foundation to every kind of anxiety or depression disorder, because what ends up happening is low self-esteem leads people to think, spiral downward as they think badly about themselves.
What did I do wrong? Why can't I do this?
And then they just start to hate themselves. That self-loathing becomes sort of an all-pervasive reality. And then what happens? It starts manufacturing all of the self-sabotage. It just sort of happens automatically after a while. So one of the things that one of my early teachers taught me was to create a quick word reaction to that, so that you can nip it in the bud, so it doesn't have a chance to Xerox itself into the universe. And so as soon as you start noticing you're having negative thoughts, you say cancel, 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 cancel. Even to the point that I would even visualize pushing cancel on a keyboard. Like we have a little cancel button. I'd be pushing the cancel button. I'd be thinking cancel, cancel. And anytime that negative self-talk would start, or if I, was having a bad day and I'd start thinking negatively, I just start doing that cancel, cancel, cancel. Sounds ridiculous. It sounds silly, but my God, it works so well. And it sounds a lot like what you just said.
Yeah, and I'm a vision person. I'm very dyslexic, so vision to me, it makes sense. Yeah. So I would see what I was saying, like the news on that ticker tape that's along the bottom of I would kind of witness myself what I was saying.
Yeah.
And then I would start putting new words in, so that I was like putting out something, it's whatever tool you can get. Everybody's brain works differently. So find the tools that work for your truth.
Yes.
And negotiate it the better you can. But I can tell you, the sooner you get yourself not in that circle, because I know, living with an alcoholic for all those years, that, the energy kept bringing me down. And it was all I can do some days to say, stop. Sometimes I tell my brain, just stop, quit. Don't do that anymore, and then I would try to but it would almost be like trying to start a car that didn't want to start,
Yes.
But I had to keep going until you got that jump start of that car and the battery and get it going again, because you cannot stop at the first couple times. People a lot of times don't want to work past the struggle. They don't want to work past that moment of, oh, I can't do it. It's not a new thought. Well, you only tried 3 or 4 times. Try the 10, the 20, the 15, even 50 times if you need to, because that's how we renegotiate our brain. You have to, mantras, you have to say them for almost 20 some odd days, to get get that back into your life. So it's going to take a little bit of time to retrain the brain and the nervous system. The nervous system has to figure out it's safe, and it's going to take many times of telling it is safe to feel safe, so that when you're going into these triggers or a moment, that your nervous system says, oh, I am safe here. I'm safe here, because our nervous system. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I'm shocking at this, by the way, and just it's tempting, when you kind of on a screen and people watch you, they think, oh, you must have everything sorted. I'm a priest, and I think no, that negative self-talk is torture for me. And it keeps me in a state of not doing things, because if I can't, there's a sort of perfectionism element to it as well. You won't do it as well as somebody else. You're a fraud. All those sorts of negative self-talk, I think it's also partly connected. Like Jamie, I was a police officer. I was for 10 years. I was a police officer, and hypervigilance is a thing, right? And
still is.
Yeah, it's a learned behavior.
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
Yeah. And you became cops or police officers because you were hypervigilant in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had that tendency.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I mentioned it partly to give some encouragement to people listening, to say that I struggle with this. I should only speak for myself. And so I'm all ears as to tactics to stop that. Not least because, I have children as well, and they take that on as well. They might have that tendency as well, right? So, I'm all ears to how to switch it off.
Yeah, exactly. But I understand, me being human, it will never stop. Those thoughts will never stop. But what can I do to negotiate them? What can I do when they do appear? Everything in our life is here to experience. And so, people always say, why didn't I not get that? I thought I dealt with that lesson. I thought I dealt with that trauma. Well, we didn't deal with it in the 360 view, as an orb, it's all over. And so going into it, we're going to have these negative thoughts, we all get to an age where we get triggered in a certain way. We all get to, and those negative thoughts will come in. We get around a friend and those negative thoughts come in. And then we get around a certain situation in a job, we get those negative. So we're always going to get something in our outer world that's going to make us look into what are we saying to ourselves. So what are the tools that we can practice? And I can tell you that, 33 years of marriage, it's just been in the last couple of years that I can say I've actually practiced it better. And maybe I can say, well, compared to what I did in year 5.
Yeah.
So what can we do with it? People look at me and go, gosh, you've got your feet underneath you. Oh, you didn't see me trying to get to work today. It's as I'm saying my mantra, I'm attuning to the energy of the now. Father, sky, Mother Earth, help me get there so I can be my better me. It's that whatever you can do to get to where you're at, because we're all human and we're not all 100% all the time. My goal is always to be about 80%, because it's like I have to give myself grace because I'm not a perfectionist. My dyslexia taught me that a long time ago. You cannot be perfect. Life is not going to be perfect for you. You're going to have triggers. You're going to have scenarios where you're going to be less than other people.
Yes.
What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
And how we respond, like you said, is really where the key is, because all of us are going to experience this. Father Chris, you said it right when you're saying, we look like we might have it together. Okay, well, we're on the air. There's a certain decorum that you follow.
It can be dangerous for people to think that.
It can.
Yeah.
But I think what it is also is that sometimes humility can sometimes
gratitude is the big healer.
Yeah. And knowing how to have a healthy relationship with those things. Because see, look, it's very often that sometimes people have a hard time detecting the difference between a person who is very confident in their abilities and a narcissist. It can often look like they're the same thing. And if you're really very confident, people will accuse you of being narcissistic or conceited. Yes. So, I think sometimes people have developed a sort of like boundary where they don't want to cross that, but it's so easy to fall back the other direction too. And, there's a fine line between being overconfident and having low self-esteem. It's really just, it's a teeter-totter. You're basically on a tightrope, and if you're not balancing it perfectly, you can fall to either side very quickly, which people often do. So I think,
but I want to say though that balance is not in the middle.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yes,
balance is not. You try to balance a pencil, it's not in the middle.
Yeah.
So finding balance is where you're at and what you're doing. And when we're going into this, being self-confident, but a lot of people get self-confident in the mind, and that's the ego. Mm-hmm. But if you kind of get down into your gut and say, I know this, and that's where I try to walk, is more, I have an understanding of this. And then, you were talking about how, I want to add vulnerability in. If you don't add vulnerability into perfectionism or, looking at your perfectionism or, vulnerability into walking in your life, I have found vulnerability is my greatest tool. It's my greatest strength that I can have, because sometimes when I'm vulnerable with myself, looking into myself, witnessing myself, vulnerable with the understanding of what's happening around me as I observe what's around me, that I can get into the bigger picture of, so don't be worried about being vulnerable. It's not a weakness. It's actually a strength if you use it to your greater moments.
That's a tough lesson for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of us are taught not to be vulnerable.
It's rare in younger people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is, because it's not in their. It's not supposed to be in their age group.
They've got to survive. Yeah. They've got to survive long enough. Yeah.
Exactly. You can't be that. But I've talked to a couple people who when they look at vulnerability, because it's not something to be fearful of.
Yeah.
But to say, okay, I can be a little bit more scared in this moment. that's okay. Or I can be a little bit more not sure in this moment.
Or maybe just open, because think about it from this vantage point. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness too.
Right.
But kindness is a type of vulnerability, isn't it? You're putting yourself out there. And even when it's the right thing to do, you can get burnt being, too nice or being too kind. People take advantage of you.
You have to be willing to.
Yes.
You have to be willing to.
Yes.
Not necessarily get burnt, but have other people's perspective not be what you're wishing for.
Yes.
There again is the trigger, because that reaction that they had is not necessarily what you need to receive.
Yes. Yeah, that's well said. Now, how do we handle, or how would we approach deep-rooted traumas like abuse or something where the brain was wired to literally respond in this negative way, because let me preface this by saying that a lot of the things that I see in my work when I'm working in exorcism ministry, and people have this preconceived notion what this is, they're thinking Linda Blair all the time. When in reality, the demons we're facing is not, Lucifer in the flesh. It's people's traumas being externalized as a thought form that sort of torments them, becomes this little monster that has enslaved them. And it's usually, when you get into it, a deep-rooted trauma that they've never dealt with. So how do we work with people with that kind of issue?
Okay, so there's different ways. And I'm going to use an example that I use because my dyslexia is deep-rooted. I have a belief that my soul has been dyslexic many lifetimes. So a lot of my trauma comes from working through a lot of other lifetimes. I'm tired of past lives. They're all around us. But the lives that I've had around me that I've been working with being dyslexic. And so with me, when I had an experience just lately where I work in elementary school, and my supervisor told me that I wasn't good with kids. I wasn't good at working one-on-one with students. I wasn't on time. All these things that actually, our clocks in our school were different in each room. How can I be late? And that I've always had, excellence on all my observations for 20 years of working in the school. So there's this trigger of old patterns of somebody telling me I was less than. And my job was going to change because of it. I was going to be taken away from groups and walking into classrooms and just supporting the classrooms. So I was getting demoted because of that scenario in my perception. Which is the trigger, right?
Right.
So going into this, so the thing that my guides, I'm so grateful for, that they gave me this image of separating out. So I came home, like you said, got angry, had my little pity party, had my inner child scream and yell. I gave myself 24 hours to just go through it. Yeah. And then I sat down and I said, okay, the information that was given to me was this, and the person that said it was that. So then what I did was I separated out the situation. I separated out what was said to me that was my trigger. So I dealt with that emotionally. I dealt with that. How can I do this? How can I state that? How can I make this right this wrong a right in me? So I went through the language. Well, let's see, clocks, who's really late. I was there half the time before my supervisor was even in the room, and she was in the same room with me. So with that how can I negotiate that? Which actually, when I worked through that, because it was told me on a Friday, so I got the weekend to work through this, that I sat down and I worked through a lot of those statements, emotions, wrote down on paper what was that reaction. Then, after I got that negotiated, I went and said, oh, now this is who talked to me about it. So then I was able to say, what was her story? Well, I know that my supervisor, lovingly her, she's a great person. She has a lot of tools. But me being the who I am, and she knows I'm intuitive. I had an experience where I had to show her I was intuitive. I don't show everybody. That sometimes I kind of throw people off. They don't know how to react to me. They don't know what to do with me. They don't know. They don't know me. And like when I went into college, I was going to go into college and I took a test and they said, your dyslexia is so bad, but your knowings on how to work through something, they said they never saw such an extreme separation. I was like almost at 100 at dealing with life, but being able to spell and negotiate the written word was so low.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'm not a straight line.
Yeah.
So I really throw people off. And so with that she didn't know what to do with me. So this is how she, in her trigger, in her emotions, did this. So my perspective after working through my witnessing her, understanding her, and yes, I'm intuitive, so I kind of get a different perspective. But at the same time, though, looking at who she is, she runs in fear and flight a lot. She gets anxiety triggered. This is what she shows.
Right.
So with that, then I was like, okay, I can give her grace. Because what actually was triggering me was what was said to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't who was saying it. It was what was saying to me. So I really had to negotiate what was being said to me. So then that's when I called the meeting with somebody else, with my principal, and we talked about it. And the thing that I kept doing, I asked my guides to help me, and your guides will help you. Your whoever you believe in will help you. And I said in the meeting, tell me what I need to do when I start getting too emotional. And they said, breathe. So whenever I heard the word breathe, I knew I was going to get too emotional.
Yeah.
And so whenever I heard the word breathe, I went back to the reason why I'm calling this meeting is because this is what was said to me. Mm-hmm. So it's like that show, Dragnet or whatever it was, the facts, man, just the facts. Tell me just the facts.
Right.
What are the facts? So getting ourselves down to the facts, and I know this took practice, but I can tell you since I put this practice into my my wheelhouse, that my triggers have been less and less and less because I've discerned out. Discern is a great word to learn in life.
Yeah.
And
Isn't
use it.
Isn't it though? Yeah.
Well, it is my cornerstone.
Yeah.
It's my cornerstone. If I can discern out what is that trigger and separate out so the person, because the person is just a messenger for the experience that we need to work through. So sometimes, it doesn't matter who said it in the bigger picture. It's what was said that when we work through that and see and get down to the facts many times, we can diffuse and work through those knowings and those. So then
it's a pretty high order skill though. If we can learn anything by experience, it's that people who we really don't like, even people who we believe are malintended towards us, can in fact tell us things that are true and worth listening to. And people who really love us, who, without question, we know they love us, can tell us things that are not true, not out of malice, but because they're just not true. And I'm also interested in your reflection on, we're bombarded with, we're all being polarized. Well, that polarization is happening because of a few things coinciding. We've got social media where, you never really used to know what your mad Aunt Doris thought about politics, and now you do. So you've got that. But we've also got this education system that has misinterpreted people being triggered to say, well, let's not teach anyone anything. Let's not challenge any of the what has become the new orthodoxy. And so you've got people go. So in other words, people can no longer sit comfortably with somebody that disagrees with them.
No.
And that's the heart of a lot of like modern, where the word trigger is used in a postmodern context. I think most of the time that's used, it's not about some deep-seated trauma that's coming out in somebody. But I think that's legitimate, and you've talked about that really importantly. But it's more about the fact that we
don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be uncomfortable.
An intolerance with sitting in a different space. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is.
So
is
how do
that-
people adapt to that? I mean, given that like my kids are bombarded by Instagram, they're not on Facebook. They say that's for boomers. They think I'm a boomer, by the way.
Oh, for God's sake.
I know. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm Gen X, thank you very much.
Yes.
But,
Hey, we were all old when we got over 30, right? That's my kid's standard.
Look out, that might trigger somebody.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, look, my kids are fairly balanced, I'd say, but their friends aren't. And so, but what do you think is a good way to sort of manage this culture that's crept in of just, being absolutely incapable of being outside of a very narrow comfort zone?
Well,
A false comfort zone as well, by the way.
yeah, and this is where sometimes when I get something that is not my truth. And that's usually when we have an understanding somewhere in us that is a truth, and the only one that I know is the truth is divine love, but other thing, it's all perspective, it's all understandings. But when we're getting something that doesn't feel right, and I can tell you, I'm married to my greatest naysayer. So there's a lot of things that get said to me that are uncomfortable. Yeah. And I've really practiced to tell myself, sit, stay, be uncomfortable, sit here and stay and listen, and that's the thing is that, we're going to be getting bombarded by so much. Be willing to turn it off if it's something that's not feeling good to us. But I love getting a fuller perspective to be able to get more well-rounded on my truths.
Yeah. Well,
and our kids don't necessarily have those skills. Like you said, it takes I've got a couple laps around the world. So, it's like I get a bigger picture. But the thing is, though, that, getting into this and really finding out really what is our negative. What is a negative? Like once I figured out that my husband was my greatest naysayer, which my naysaying actually kept me on my path that I'm meant to be on.
Yeah.
Every time that he tried to derail me because of his story, because I fit out of his box. He came from a Midwestern Republican, Lutheran, judgmental family.
Yeah.
He comes by it honestly,
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm very gray, white, it's like I'm all over the place. I don't fit in anybody's box. Mm-hmm. So for me, I can be a trigger for him and he can be a trigger for me, but we got to be willing to sit and be a little bit uncomfortable with seeing what is this here to show me? What am I supposed to hear from this? And then discern out what it is, but our kids, we got to really say, like for me, I started saying to my kids, is this a truth that you want to listen to? Is this with kids at school, when somebody says to them, you're stupid. I go, are you? That's my first words to them. Are you? No.
Sometimes.
I'm very dyslexic. Am I stupid? They say no. I've been told I've been stupid my whole life. Am I stupid? No. Are you? No. So let that rebound off of you. Picture like this rubber in front of you and let it rebound off of you, because it's their stuff that they're throwing on you. And I say this a little bit different for first graders. I say it a little different for third graders. I say it a little different for sixth graders.
I think a lot of times people say that too. They're projecting what they're feeling about themselves.
Exactly.
Sorry, Brandon.
It's very interesting you say that, because a couple years ago, I had to work with kids, and that was one of the things that kept coming up to me. They said, Mr. Brandon, so-and-so called me stupid. And I looked at them and asked, are you? No. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
It was just so easy, but they couldn't understand, they couldn't grasp it, that, because they said something to me, then I am that way. No. Right.
Well, these generations,
thinkers at different age,
these
right?
younger generations, I think that what I've noticed in them, in my my analysis of it. And we all suffer from this also in certain degrees, but I think it's more pervasive now, is this idea that you need validation from everyone else. Why? I've never, in my approach towards everything I've ever done in life, which is maybe, I guess, a bit of an outsider, so maybe that's the answer to the question of why, is that people want to feel like they're in the in club, and that never mattered to me. I didn't care if I belonged or didn't belong. I did what I felt was the right thing to do for the situation. And that, if it made me an outsider, great. Fine. If it didn't, well, fine. But I think the problem is that we should not seek validation in other people's minds. I think we should only seek validation by the standard of which we live. And if we're spiritual or religious people, then that should be God or our higher, whatever that higher power is. But not necessarily in having to feel validated by someone else or someone's approval. So I think what has become a big trigger point for people is ultimately that, because when you look at the political divisiveness that exists today, what it really comes down to is, why does everyone feel so inclined to have to challenge people of a different ideology or paradigm, other than to say that, you're invalidating what I believe? Well, so what if they do? So what if they do? Why does that matter? And then you get into cancel culture as a almost a backlash or a type of retribution for it. And these are not healthy responses, in my opinion. So, Natasha, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, like I was reading the comments, and there's teachers out there that actually say you're stupid. And that's the thing is that at some point in time, we have to take our time and say, I'm done with that story. I'm just done with it. Mm-hmm. And if you need to swear at it, if you need to do anything with it, but, at some point in time, we have to tell ourselves, I am in charge of my own knowings.
I like that.
I am in charge of my own self. Mm-hmm. Screw there are people who told me different beforehand, and say that as much as you can. Because I can tell you that in my business, I work with a lot of people with childhood trauma because their parents didn't know better to do better. Their teachers didn't know better to do better because they were living out what they were taught. But at a kid, we didn't know that. We were so vulnerable because we probably lived in the same thing that our teachers were telling us.
Yeah.
But don't you think that is because my view is, look, there's the Philip Larkin poem, which I can't read the first lines of on this YouTube show, but they F you up your mum and dad is how it starts, and I think so okay, you could have extremes, of course. You can have parents that are like literally sexually, physically, emotionally deeply abusive. I'm not pardoning that, but the only way through that, as far as I can see, is forgiveness. It is to. I think. Look, it gets easier when you become a parent because you realize how hard it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so, my sense of. By the way, I wasn't abused by my parents. I'm not, just for the record, just in case I don't want to defame them. But
I was getting on the phone.
My sense of gratitude to them, because is. I removed the expectation for them to be perfect, because that's actually a very young child thing. When you're a very small child, you have to believe that your parents are perfectly right, because that's why you don't run out into traffic when they say don't, right? But as you get older, seeing your parents as sinful human beings just like you, who also didn't have a guidebook when you were born, I think is where the healing's found. And even if in fact they have been really abusive, like genuinely abusive, objectively abusive, what's the alternative to forgiveness? Like,
I know forever? For me, I've lived a life where there's certain things that happened to me that were unforgivable.
Mm-hmm.
I live with a man who has done unforgivable things. He has thrown me out under the bus. That was not something. It was not pretty, And I will not forgive him for that. But I love the man he's becoming. I'm loving the man. So if anytime he goes down a dry drunk or he goes down anything that looks similar to that non-forgivable moment, we're not going there. I do something else. You know, I say in myself, I love you, I love you, I love you, because the energy around us is what makes a difference.
Pivot and change direction.
Exactly. If I put out the energy of love, even though he's not love at that moment, at least I can put love between us.
Yeah.
Right.
Or what I say is that, you know, that was then, this is now, I'm living now. And I like the part of forgiveness that says, it may not be okay, but I'm going to be okay.
Well, yeah,
I'm going to be okay. Yeah, because
I mean, obviously, I didn't clarify what I meant by forgiveness.
No, I understand that. I understand that, but I wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, my definition of forgiveness is letting go of your right to revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds similar to what you were describing, right?
Yes.
Because forgiving somebody doesn't say it's okay. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is saying you have wronged me. I've acknowledged that wrong. I actually do believe you have a right, a kind of right, a moral right to vengeance. I'm not saying people should go out and be vigilantes, but that internal moral right to vengeance and choosing to not act that out. I think that's what Jesus meant by forgiveness, and so that, you know, that's my model.
And my way of negotiating that was being me in spite of it. That was my revenge. That was
that's right, because ultimately it kills you. That's the whole
exactly.
point.
I was going to be me instead.
They might not care. That's right.
Right? Because everything that happens on my outer world helps me to be stronger in my inner world. And that's my perspective, and I'm sticking to it. You know, because that's how I got through my grief. That's how I got through my stories. That's how I got through my life. That's how I got through so much. And I'm going to say, you know, that I didn't go through where I was homeless. I didn't go through, but I moved 6 times in 3 years, you know, because of my ex-husband being on drugs. You know, I was abused when I was a kid. You know, it's like I married an alcoholic. You know, it's like all these things, we learn things through our outer world. And if we can take that perspective, what is this here to teach me? That softens the, you know, even if we look back as a kid, well, my teacher told me I was stupid. Well, what did that teach me? Am I stupid now?
Softens the pain a little bit because you're growing.
Yeah, exactly. And time and distance makes a big difference. Time and difference and experiences help us to do a little bit different.
The challenge always comes back to, I think, you know, the building one's foundation from within one's own self. That's kind of where I was getting at before, with people seeking validation outside of themselves, you know, needing approval of others and all of that. That's not true relationship. That's not even freedom. That's a type of slavery, in my opinion. And I think a lot of the problems, it is dependency, and it's not, I mean, dependency is never really healthy. The only kind of healthy dependency is like natural dependency, like an infant being dependent upon its parents to survive. That's a natural dependency. That's okay. But when it becomes, a kind of psychological dependency, an emotional dependency, where one's value cannot be found outside of how other people view them or think of them, that becomes problematic. So it's also, I think, a violation of one's own inner freedom, and that's what we're really doing. I think when we trigger other people, is that people's freedom is feeling compromised. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, where does that freedom come from? Does it come from a situation? Does it come from, is it granted by another person? Or can it only be
seeking a false god too?
Well, it is a type of idolatry. And I'd say maybe it's the ultimate idolatry, that we don't need these things. This is why I say to people, look, I'm the first one to say, when you've got toxicity in your life, get rid of it. I don't care if it's a parent. I don't care if it's a child. I don't care if it's the closest person to you. If you've got toxicity in your life that is absolutely irreconcilable, then you have to purge it. That's the only reasonable thing to do. you can be compassionate and still purge it.
That's what tough love is.
It is.
You know, that and tough love is love for myself. That's
Yeah.
saying I don't need that. I can't do that anymore. That's not me
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
That's tough love for myself, saying I got to do it, and then saying no to the other person.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to say it takes practice sometimes.
That's hard.
Sometimes, you know, it's
really
like,
hard.
you know, my husband didn't get sober overnight.
Yeah.
But it
Right.
started out almost the year before when I stood there and he would talk to me a certain way and I'd say, I'm done you talking to me this way.
Yeah.
You're not talking to me this way anymore. I didn't say it outward because that would have been a backlash
Yeah.
at that time. But I would say it in my energy field. I'm done with this. And slowly that changed. And I can say almost with saying a whole lot of prayers, redoing my contracts, doing a lot of emotional, spiritual work, that almost 6 months later is when he got caught by the cops. He got pulled over in their dead end road in front of the neighbors. And he had to be vulnerable enough to say, and he got videotaped for the first time to see himself drunk. Talk about being vulnerable,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to learn his experience. So going into this, it's how do we negotiate the crap that happens in our life? Is that we either sink in it or we decide to walk with it or walk through it. You know, it's that choice that we all have to make. And I understand people don't all have the same skills. I get it, but it's practicing out of it. You know, I lived with two pessimists and I had two optimists in this house when my kids were growing up.
Yeah.
My two pessimists are turning into optimists because they've practiced their way out of it. You know, it takes time and it takes energy and it takes being willing to be very uncomfortable with ourselves.
That seems to be the key there is
Self-discipline is what it's about.
well, it is because it's like, think about even like basic things like exercise. Why do people they don't want to exercise. They don't want to, because they don't want to feel uncomfortable, right? I mean, isn't that why people refuse to get on the treadmill or they don't want to go
They
through?
don't want to change. They don't want to change.
That's true. That's true.
They say they do, but they don't.
But they get, it's resisting that inclination to stay in that. I don't want to even call it a rut because it's much more than that. It's
death because it's refusal to grow.
Well, there
It's
you go.
death.
That is probably the only way
It's a
to put
rabbit
it.
hole that we don't ever want to look up and out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's that meme that has where you have two people in a ditch. Both of them have a shovel. One will sit there with the shovel. The other one will make a ladder out of it,
Right.
Yes.
out of the dirt. It takes a skill, and it takes a skill, and it takes a want to do it. But I can tell you, though, our start button doesn't start at the same time for everybody at the same age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it took my husband almost 20 years of our marriage to get sober. He had many opportunities before that. It takes somebody else to turn. So don't ever be worried about starting today or restarting at a moment or rethinking it in a moment. I don't know how many times in a day I push, and I agree with the cancel, except for I do cancel, delete, and, shift, cancel, delete. I picture myself doing it on the computer. Right?
Control, Alt, Delete. Yeah.
Control, Alt, Delete, But I picture myself doing it so my brain sees it in a different way, because that's the thing is that we've learned that people need to see it, hear it, and write it to start changing the brain. Mm-hmm. And so if we can start negotiating that, but we have to change what we're watching. We have to change the language we use. We have to start doing these things in order to negotiate. And it's not an overnight dance. And that's one thing I want to give people grace about, is that it's not an overnight dance. Finding our truth is a journey. People want to make life a destination. Heck, I've talked to my mother of heart, who was on her deathbed, said I've learned more about my life in the last couple of weeks of me being on this bed, which she died 3 weeks later, than I have my whole life living. And she went through hell and back. I mean, she went through losing a child. One of her children was in a quadriplegic. She was in an abusive marriage. She wanted to be a clustered nun, and she had 5 kids. It's like, all these things that she had to go through, mental breakdowns. But she said she learned so much about herself when she slowed down and was willing to negotiate herself.
Life is a process. Well, let's take our break here. And then when we come back, we'll start taking your questions for Natasha and anything else that might be on your mind as the discussion continues after this. Don't go away.
Eyes and fish are tight for my sleeplessness. Feel it closing in. No holding back, it's tight. Wrong in my right mind. Surely I'm convinced. Oh, we've been here before. I'm unsold. Embers fit up my nose. Half dead and asleep. I messed up to dreams. Will you be ready when the darkness comes? Clothe ourselves in light, hoping we'll survive. Won't raise a white flag, 'cause I'll die on the shield, 'cause they're coming for the kill. Even though my mind is reeling still. Oh, we've been here before. I'm unsold. Embers fit up my nose. Half dead and asleep. I messed up to dreams. Will you be ready when the darkness comes?
I'm feeling alone, left in the dark, contemplating about decisions. Why does no one ever see me? Did I do something wrong? Did I hurt feelings? It is hard to be found when no one's looking. I'm feeling left out and I keep screaming. No one ever understands it. Feels like I became Atlantis. Hidden from the world. I'm looking something magical, 'cause no one else seems to even bother. Looks like I'm on my own, facing this loneliness. It is hard to be found when no one's looking. I'm feeling left out and I keep screaming. No one ever understands it. Feels like I became Atlantis. Hidden from the world, I'm looking for a way. I'm looking for a way.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. We've been talking with Natasha Venter about triggers and how to resolve them, how to work through them, how to move away from reactionary thinking, which is the common norm, I think, and move into how to respond interpersonally and intrapersonally. That's also very important, I think. We kind of covered all that ground, and now it's time to take some of your questions. And I see a lot of them coming in from all over the internet, and we'll hopefully be able to get through most of them. You can also call into the show. We think we've got our lines corrected. Brandon tested them today, and they seem to be working perfectly fine. The number to call is 718-362-6380. That's 718-362-6380. Remember to enter PIN number 855-4111 to be placed into the queue. You can ask your questions on any chat room, anywhere that we're simulcasting on the internet. And, of course, you can call us internationally free on Skype by dialing up Eye of the Seer, EYEOFTHESEER. More when we return. Don't go away. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of questions here for our discussion tonight. Some that we can, as a panel, start to answer, I think, and hopefully help some people out there that might have some kind of questions about what we've been discussing here tonight, because everyone experiences triggers. Everyone experiences everything that we're talking about.
It's pretty
tonight.
obvious by the chat. We're all screwed up.
Oh yeah, I mean that's about part of being human, right? But there are
That's being human.
that's being human.
That's the
Being a little
experience.
screwed up.
But there's proactive ways to deal with it, and then there's dysfunctional ways, and
Right.
we're trying to hopefully give you some
Dynamic and
strategies. Dynamic and static. That's right.
sir.
So, Jamie, why don't you start us off with the first question?
So we had one from Marty,
okay.
and she went through a traumatic breakup roughly 2 years ago. And she is, and I've witnessed this, and yes, Marty, you do seem to have a trigger. She's triggered by anything that makes her think of him. She's not a Christian, but she wants to know if there's a spiritual way she can move past it. She's tried. I know that I'm not going to put all your business out there, Marty, but I know she's tried several different ways to let it go. But every time she thinks she's making strides, something happens to set her back. So she's trying to find a way to get past this relationship.
Okay, so can I give an example?
Please.
Absolutely.
Please don't try to let go of it. Transform it. Sometimes we cannot let go of things. We have to give it a chance to transform. Just like a puppy turns to an older dog, just like us humans go from kids to, we have to transform. And so with that there again is going into transforming whenever you get that trigger of him. And I can tell you, I live in the same house with some of my triggers. And they're daily sometimes. And some of just the natural reactions that he is. I mean, drinking didn't change who he was. That was a practice that he had to become. Just drinking made him a little bit more messed up and more reactive than interactive. So now that he's learning to be more interactive, life has gotten, oh my gosh, he's turning into the man I've always wanted to be married to. But I have to transform what that language is into what it is now. And so there again, I'm going to ask you to use things like, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. Because those moments are always going to be there. There's always going to be something that reminds you of somebody.
Yeah,
but the
true.
thing is, though, it's like grief. When we're in grief at the very beginning, it's hell. It's hell, and it's sinking, and it's mud, and it's fiery, and it's everything. But after a little while, when we walk through it, we start becoming, I'm gaining my newer self back because it's a new normal. So look at yourself that after this relationship, what is the new normal that you're becoming? So get a perspective that gives you more positive understandings about negotiating the things that you did live through. And I honor you what you lived through. I respect what you lived through, but please remember that you are not what you lived through. You are free from that, but it's transforming it. I have an understanding we cannot let go of something. We have to transfer dark into light. Nighttime comes the dawn of the day. So what can you do to bring more light into your world around that darkness? Because the only way that we can transform darkness is to put love with it. So what can you do to bring more love into your life? Bringing love into relationships, bringing love into where you're safe with doing certain things. And it's a practice to do better. It's a practice to know how to do it a little bit better. You're gonna feel like, and there's no failures, but there's those step back, step forward things. And even if you get triggered in the morning and you realize you got triggered in at the nighttime, say, I noticed it. I'm grateful I noticed it, and I'm going to work through it. And I love myself for going through this. Language for you right now is going to be very important. And so try to take the self-punishing out of it so that you can be who you need to be. That's my perspective.
Well said. Okay,
Yes.
Brandon, what's our next one?
So the next one comes from Sandra. I do apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Shonda?
She asked, yes. She asked, what is being vulnerable? How do we be vulnerable in a healthy way?
No, very well asked. In my understanding, that being vulnerable is feelings, practicing to feel safe in places that we normally don't. And when we can practice that moment, in other words, like somebody who is afraid of riding the bus, being vulnerable with that. So practice, walking up to the bus stop and then walking back to your house, then walking up and standing at the bus stop, and then walking back, walking up to the bus, driving up, and let it go by, and then walking back home. Telling the bus driver, I'm going to step one step on. I'm not trying to get on, but I'm going to get one step on. So practicing that vulnerability so that every time you can look back and go, God, I stood there on the bus, didn't I? And be willing to be that a little bit unsure of yourself in the moments. And so that's what I classify as vulnerability, is being more and more safer in moments where we're not as comfortable in.
Very good. Very good. Father Chris, do you see one that you want to present?
We've got one here. Someone who can't truly know most of the time what they're capable of, but sometimes loses control. Are they considered toxic? I don't like. Sorry, I'm going to change that question. Do we call people toxic, or are there people that have toxic behaviors?
That would be more correct.
That would be more correct. I have told many students, you're a great kid who's making poor choices.
I would say I think it can go both ways. I think it usually goes the way that you just said, that it's usually, decent people that make bad choices or bad decisions and act in a toxic way. I have, however, met people that were just thoroughly toxic to the bone. But I think that's a smaller number. They've given into it. They become it. They've become it. Okay,
it's a form of possession, actually.
So if you've got a person in your life that can't help it, okay, because there's some kind of underlying situation, well, there's only so far, even and then you're expected to go with that. So, if you're talking about a spouse, right? You can do what Natasha's talking about here, where you work through it. You try to help them build themselves into a better person, but not everyone's capable of that. There's different abilities, there's different skill levels, right? We've established that. So you take it as far as
I got lucky.
You did, because
I'm walking a
absolutely
miracle. I'm just saying I'm walking a miracle.
It really is, because I don't really hear that outcome very often. And I deal obviously in pastoral work with a lot of failed relationships,
tragically too,
and it usually does, or not usually, but it often can. But when it comes to, like, if you're responsible for someone who's toxic, you are only required to take that so far. If you get to a point where you've done everything that is humanly possible, everything that is ethically possible, everything within your moral power, and it's destroying you, then you need to get help and you need to find another solution. So I think I know the question you're referring to here. And if you're talking about a condition that, like a mental health condition or a neurological condition, and you're at your wit's end, you can't handle it anymore, then you're going to need to find somebody, a professional that can take on that role, and you need to divorce yourself from it, because you can't let anything destroy you in the process of trying to do some good. You can't help someone if you're getting destroyed. Exactly.
And a lot of caregivers get into this trap.
They do.
A lot of caregivers do get in this trap, and I can honor caregivers for that trap. But I know for me that there's one time that I had to say to my uncle that I can't take care of you. You need to go into a home. And it wasn't that he was toxic, but that situation was toxic for me, because I had to just take care of my mom with Lou Gehrig's disease 3 years before that. So going into this, that we can do this, but if we're toxic ourselves, we got to figure out how to get help. We got to figure out how to get help. And sometimes the universe, the world that we work with, will help us. Like my husband being toxic, and then the dominoes just fell into the right magical place, and he got pulled over by the police officers. So then he had to go through AA, he had to go through counseling, he had to go through all these things, which helped him be less toxic.
There was a child that, this story comes up often on the news, unfortunately, but I remember when I was in college, there was this one particular case that was very close to where I worked. A child came in and he shot and killed a number of students in his school, and got a life sentence and was tried as an adult and convicted as an adult and got a life sentence.
It's a strange law you have in that country.
It is, but when you really consider that this is a person that lived destruction, when you really like look into the way that they behave and you look into some of the psychology, and of course, granted, I didn't meet this person, so I'm talking from an outsider's view. Mm-hmm. However, I'm sure there's several cases of this that do apply. Sometimes that is the most compassionate solution, is that you need to remove their opportunity to ever hurt anyone else. And
I agree with that.
And it's sad when it's a child, particularly because, we want to be able to give opportunities for growth. And I'm not so sure our prison system really can offer that or ever will.
No.
But at the same time, no, right.
Yeah, we had a student in our school actually that lovingly said she tried to drown her brother.
Yeah.
When she was 3 years old.
Mm. Yeah.
She had darkness. I've taken entities off of kids. I couldn't. This was attached. This was in her DNA.
Sometimes there are just bad seeds, and it's sad. But
it
that's
was
the
in
truth
her
of it.
DNA. It was woven through her. When I
Right.
looked at her, she was dark.
Yeah, I've seen it too.
And it was so sad. She was a beautiful outside child and everybody, oh my gosh, the way she made the ripple effect go through the school, it was just, and what can we do to help this person, this child? She wasn't just a student, she was a person, but all we could do was hopefully plant seeds of better whenever we could. But to this day, I don't know what happened to her. I know that some of the classmates that social media was scary for them with her.
Yeah.
Because the way she was so, but there again, what do we do with toxicness?
Yeah.
Sometimes we just have to manage it where it's at and then.
Or let professionals manage it.
Yeah. Divorce it as soon as we can.
Yeah. Okay. What's our next one, Jamie?
Got Michelle from Facebook. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay.
I think it's a good question to address because I think she's confused.
Okay.
Michelle asks, you say that even children who are toxic should be rid of, but how can you do that to one who is autistic? I don't believe anybody
Well, I
said
think
that.
she was talking about when I said that sometimes you have to rid toxicity of your life, even if it's a parent, even if it's a child, is what I
Got
said.
you.
She's responding to that.
She goes on to say
But if someone's got a mental condition where they can't.
She goes on to say someone who can't truly know most of the time what they are capable of at times and lose control, are they considered toxic? I would say no, because
but the interaction of working with them can be toxic for the person,
for the
caregiver.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's when we need to bring professional help in.
It could be wearing. It could be if you're getting beaten up, bruises, broken ribs, concussions constantly. It's toxic.
There are some low functioning autistic people I worked with, and even traumatic brain injury. People that are like violent. And you can't put yourself into a situation or risk even other members of your family. Suppose you have other kids and they're being attacked or something were to happen to them. It's not their fault. That's when you have to seek professional guidance and assistance. You can't be the one to take that on your own. I just don't think you can.
Yeah. And when you're working with the mental capabilities of some, I work in an elementary school. We see them constantly, in our school system, and it's it's love altering for me. It's like it bothers me, and I'm trying not to say the word hurt and all that for me, because I don't want to be hurt because of it. But see, there again, I'm watching my language because I don't want to take it on.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, there are certain circumstances that these children are born into these moments. And, I have perspectives in my spiritualness about why certain things happen. But at the same time, it is what it is. And what do we do with what is? And that's the thing is that we got to get down to sometimes, this is what is, the facts. What is it? And how do we negotiate with those facts? As much as we love someone, as much as we want to care for them, sometimes we don't have all the right tools. Sometimes we don't have all the right tools.
Perfectly said. I couldn't agree with that more. All right, Brandon, what's our next one?
We got a question from Diana from Facebook.
Just saw that one.
She asked, I've heard procrastination isn't a sign of laziness. It's from past trauma. How does one get past the procrastination?
I'm listening really intently to this answer.
Yeah, I've got examples.
Go for it, Natasha.
We have to do things in spite of it. We have to do things in spite of it. I have ADHD, trauma-induced ADHD. My dyslexia brings in a little bit of ADHD. So I have a lot of procrastination. Sometimes I just feel so stuck and I can't move on. And sometimes I have to tell myself, would you get the frick up, Natasha, and do it?
Right.
And sometimes I don't do it. My husband says I'm the messiest cleaner.
I know what that's like.
Right?
Yeah.
I even do feng shui, but that's sometimes I have to do it my own way.
Yeah.
But sometimes I have to start something so that I have to continue it. And another thing that I do, procrastination is amazing, but sometimes I have to do it in spite of it, get up and do it. But one thing I have to also tell myself, stay here and finish.
All right,
Stay here and finish.
We're going to try this. Hopefully tonight, the technology gods are on our side. We're going to take a call from the 559 area code in California. Hello, you're on the air with Natasha Venter.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear us okay?
Hi, it's kind of breaking up, but I don't know, can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you. Go ahead and ask your question. We'll do the best we can.
Shoot, I'm sorry to interrupt like that. I didn't know, I really can't hear you, but, so I don't know if you guys can hear me, but, hopefully you guys can. So there's, sorry for butting in. I didn't know it was going to let me in so quickly, but, Mr. Ouellette, I've spoken with you before. I used to be one of your, students on the esotericism class. And, anyways, my question is, I guess it's more of like a comment, I struggle with now is, I think it's my ego. Like I struggle with people like offending me, saying mean things, and I want to retaliate quickly. But I'm a Christian. I would call myself a Christian. I'm not the best, but
none of us are,
it
sweetheart.
just affects me. Like, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. Yes. I don't think he can hear us very well, but we can hear you.
Okay, so basically, I struggle with like people offending me, when they say mean things. I don't know an example I could give right now, but just think of something mean. I don't know, I guess I can perceive it as mean while others can't, but some people can cuss at me and that like really irritates me. I want to retaliate right then and there. And if I don't, I stay thinking about it and it kind of like eats me up until I say something, but Jesus tells us to not retaliate, and I don't know, I struggle with that, and even it affects my relationship with my wife now, because she can be we both could be like mean to each other and be like, the best way I could describe it is like a smart ass to each other, and I just don't know how to like get over it. I've been asking the Lord Jesus to heal me from to guard my tongue, and it's just hard. It's something that I struggle with, not retaliating with people who offend me, you know. But I think ultimately they're like offending my ego, you know, and because I don't have to take offense to it, right? I'm the one that does take offense to it, but I don't have to. But for whatever reason, their words hurt me, you know, and it makes me want to be mean to them. And ultimately, like, I was kind of raised a little bit or hung out with people that kind of were rough. So to be honest, like, if it's a male man, like a male person wanting to offend me, I feel like I want to fight them, you know? It's more like, I think, a machista thing, but yeah, so I struggle with it. I don't know, maybe you guys could give me some advice or pointers or, yeah, so, yeah. That's the common question I had.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm witnessing from your energy here, and I'm intuitive, so you're calling in, so I'm getting a hit. I would say you have a wounded inner child. So your inner child has been more reactive. And if you look at how a 12-year-old, and I'm not calling you 12, but I'm just giving an example. If you look at how a 12-year-old gets reactive about certain things being said to them, they're very fiery, they're very interactive. So what I would say is that start talking with your inner child, giving your inner child a hug, giving your, and some people don't know how to do that. So what I would picture is picture like a 12-year-old or a 9-year-old standing right next to you, metaphorically, and give that child a hug and picture it being your younger self. If you constantly keep giving the younger child a hug and saying, we're going to be okay. Stop. We're going to be okay. Stop. We're going to be okay. And if you could start practicing that whenever you can, when you're starting to get that trigger, whenever you're starting to get that knowing, stop. We're going to be okay. It's okay. And you start picturing, because ego can turn in, our wounded inner child can turn into an ego that says, I'm safe, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to do okay, nobody can beat me down. But your 12-year-old or your 9-year-old didn't feel safe. And so it's going to be this backside of you that's going to keep yelling at you. So unless you deal with the trigger of which is your inner child, from what my seeing is, your truth is your truth. But taking care of that inner child can help you get less reactive in the story.
Well said. I went ahead and released the call so that he would hopefully go back to the live, because there's about a 20-second delay between the calling and, I mean, what we're saying and what they hear in the audience. So hopefully by knowing that he got disconnected, he would go back to the live show. He can hear your answer. So I think he did.
And this is always a replay too, so you can go back and listen to this.
Always go back and listen. I am at a loss as to what's going on with the phone lines, because Brandon tested them today. Jamie tested them a couple weeks ago. They are fine, but yet for some reason, once we're on the air,
when we go live,
it's like people are saying now, and this has only been the last 3-4 episodes, they're saying they can't hear. So what I'm going to say is, if you call in and you can't hear us, go ahead and ask your question. We can always hear you just fine for some reason, and then we'll respond. You just go back to listening on whatever device you're using, and then you'll hear the answer. But we'll continue to take questions from the chat room. Father Chris, have you seen another one?
Yeah, Calico Benj. What's the likelihood of generational curses lasting? He says, I know the voodoo answer, but what's the Catholic answer? I think there's also a psychological answer too.
Well, there might be even a Natasha Venter answer. So why don't we give you, Natasha, what do you think about generational curses? And then I'll give a Catholic answer.
So you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what I understand, and I do a session that is past life DNA healing. And what I do is I go back, and even like in my family, I had a family member back many generations that was told it was stupid and was born out of wedlock. So basically demeaned at that time. And for that side story, colon cancer, because of not digesting their life, came up through the family. I went back and I healed that. I went back and I hugged that person. I lifted them up off the floor. I gave them validation. I gave their energy a lot of love. And then I brought that love forward through the generations and then into my life. I'm living 3 years past what my parents passed from because of their trauma. So with that we can carry on our DNA. When we're born, when we're in our womb, we take on a lot of the energy that is around us. And going into this, that we can go back and give ourselves grace for that trauma that happened through different parts of our lives. There's a lot of times where somebody was abused, grandparents that were abused, and then the parents didn't get treated right, didn't know better, and that family emotions was carried on, and then that emotion was carried on to us. So we can carry the trauma. I don't really want to call it a curse by any means, because it's not always a curse. Mm-hmm. But it could be a emotional trap. It could be a learned behavior. It could be a trauma that has been carried through our blood system, our DNA system. I also work with those kinds of scenarios in the spirit world, other lifetimes. Like for me, I was dimmed down. My spirit was going to be too bright, and a lot of my other lifetimes, I'm going to use the word cursed me down. As soon as I lifted that up, I was on your show, I was on the Next Level Soul. It was like all of a sudden I didn't feel like I was in a small room.
Yeah.
But it's knowing how to negotiate. So that's my life story of how, yes, we can have them, but we can go in, but it's up to us to heal ourselves to negotiate those curses. They're only as powerful as we let them.
I like that. I would say that the Catholic answer is exactly the same in that respect, that, curses are empowered by us. We allow their perpetuation. And from a Catholic vantage point, all of that, everything that Natasha just said there is true. I would just perhaps add that in my experience as a Catholic exorcist, as a Catholic priest and bishop, there has never been anything that can withstand the grace of Christ. Mm-hmm. So, you know this, right? And that's a pervasive experience, whether it be from the conventionally Catholic way or just in any way that Christ reaches us, because he does reaches us all, if we're open to it. But we have to be open to it. So the questions about specifically how their endurance, how long they last. Well, they last as long as you are resolved to continue to live inside the confines of their effect. As soon as you make the commitment to break the binding, or it is a binding that it has on you, then they will continue on. But the grace of Christ defeats it, eliminates it. So the sacraments are, I think, essentially important. So if you are Catholic, then there's no sacrament in the church that is that can't resolve a curse. But you have to be willing to actually take that into yourself. You have to be ready for it, and I think that's the key.
If you look at this practically, all of us on this show are related to the Emperor Charlemagne. Okay, that's statistics. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
especially me, because I'm French.
That's right, yeah. Well, I wasn't going to mention that particular problem that you have, but what I mean. But English people, we all understand French. We just won't speak it. We want to know where they sit. But they sorry, I should say I'm an Australian as well, but I'm really still English. But even just that raw statistic tells you all of us have had our families cursed, because I can guarantee you that Charlemagne would have had a curse put on him by various groups of people who he never even met, So, and I was a policeman for 10 years. I was cursed on a fairly regular basis, sometimes deserved, sometimes
every
not.
shift.
And so, in a sense, it's not an unusual. Well, it's just the norm to live with this kind of history, generational history, if you want to call it that. Or living history of living with being cursed. Mm-hmm. And, and I think there is the psychological, like if you're feeling that psychological attack in your current life, the answer is to kind of acknowledge that and then put all those things in place that deal with it. Like the self-talk, the kind of what's the reality of this? What does it mean? Why would it bother me? Does it bother me? If it does, what can I do about it? And from a kind of spiritual Catholic Christian point of view, the solutions are the same. I mean, I would simply say there is no curse that can separate us from the love of God. Because as St. Paul said, neither heights nor depths, nor the cross itself can separate us from the love of God.
But it's not a magical thing. I want to make sure that Catholics in particular, Christians, understand that it's not magic. It's participatory, which is why I liked Natasha's answer, because she's not just saying, well, just call on some higher power. She's saying you got to take the active role in this, and you got to make the decisions to say you're going to resolve to do something about it. That's where it begins. The grace is where the higher power comes in and helps you. Yes. But it's still up to you to make to have the resolve, which is, I think, a good one for our next question. Can
I add something real quick?
Yeah, by all means.
I use the mantra a lot. I'm asking for divine healing on this. When it's more than my pay grade, in other words, it's bigger than me.
Yeah.
I'm asking for divine healing on this. And it takes me out of the mix so that something greater than me can take care of it, because there's something, but I'm human to make it happen. So in other words, when I got scared because, oh crap, my life is actually helping me now, I'm actually getting what I asked for, I had to step into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And say, I'm done with that curse. I'm done with whatever was holding me back. And I try not to use the word curse, but whatever was holding me down or back, I'm done with it and I'm walking forward. But I'm asking for divine healing on this to help me through whatever is going to come or whatever has been.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. Okay, so what's our next one, Jamie?
I think that is a good answer to our next question.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
It's just I'm not sure. How can someone that has been to war develop positive self-talk when the war is stuck in your head every day? It's hard for him to think of anything good. Mm. He's a combat vet. He's seen some terrible things. Yeah.
That's where I'm asking for divine healing on this. I'm asking for divine healing on this. You have to, there's been many a times where I have this metaphorical big box. I call it my chest, and I've put myself in it, close the lid, and what's in it is all the angels, Jesus, Mother Mary, whoever can fit in that box besides me. And I medically put myself in that box and I just say, I'm done. I'm done with this. And the thing that's so sad is the mind goes on this ticker tape of repeat. And you have to find out. So for me, now I don't know if you're taking any vitamins. And I'm going to say that a lot of pharmacies makes vitamins, so be careful what vitamins you take. But take your D, your magnesium, your E's, your fish oil, whatever you can take to bring your nervous system to a healthier place. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times when our liver is unhealthy, whenever our nervous or our adrenals are shot, which is like the battery of the car. I mean, it's the trigger for the battery of the car. Our adrenals keep us going. Our pituitary glands, our thyroid, our bodies get beaten down and you have to rebuild it up. So staying off the sugars, staying off the alcohol, staying off whatever is as that negative impact, is you have to do the physical as well as the mental, as well as the emotional and the nervous system. People forget to bring in the nervous system. So you have to tell your nervous system that you're safe. And that's where, and I know that positive talk, like you were saying, is not, it didn't work for you. But I'm going to ask you to keep doing this. Like when I was really depressed after my parents passed away, my parents or my kids would put on funny shows on YouTube. Mom, you need to watch something funny. You have to get your visual better in order to get out of that funk of the mud that depression is. And life patterns, life story, you're going to keep reliving those mental things. I don't know how many times when I was going through a lot of my depression, I don't know if you like in one of the movies where there was the big eagles that were in the show. It was Under Earth. I know what it is, but I can't. The rings of fire.
Lord of the
whatever.
Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Thank you.
okay.
And they had those big
Oh,
birds that
yes.
would
Yeah,
come
that came
over.
in.
The
the eagles.
Gandalf called them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had those birds would come in. I would put my thoughts in a
start dropping
metaphorical
boulders on
bag, and then
folks.
those birds would take it over the mountains. The thing is, though, the thoughts would keep coming back. Those birds would come back as often as I wanted them to. So find a tool that works for you and ask for divine healing on this. And it's amazing when you sit in that. Sit down and feel the love that you can have with that saying, and oh my gosh, your chemistry can change in your body. If you sit with that statement, you can feel divine coming over you and healing. It's an honest thing, but it took time for me to practice that. It takes time, and people need to give themselves a chance to work through that time. But nutrition is key.
But I get it,
mind
because
work.
a part of it is just about energy levels, right? I mean, that's like depression brings down the energy levels and all the rest of it. And it is that sort of, it's that image of hell, the devil's in the lowest cycle of hell is frozen. It's that, it's the sapping of energy that brings us down. And I get it. So it is just, for a soldier, it's about saying, well, actually, you're familiar with when
Misery.
your energy levels are down. Yeah. And when you're tired, but actually you're still under fire. So you've got to just keep going. That's what it is psychologically. I mean, it's much harder to do psychologically. And you're right, like the idea of saying, actually, if I'm miserable, what am I doing to get out of that misery? And if I'm just expecting or putting it onto somebody else to get me out of it, then I'm probably abusing somebody, right? And so
It's always about us.
because I'm saying, you need to give me something, and it's you, and therefore in your mind twists it into this person's deliberately withholding it and keeping me down. Like, no, you've got to invest in it, and yeah, watch a funny show. Or I mean, like, I'm an immigrant, and so I get homesick. And so, because actually just ridiculing Bishop Brian for being French has just made me remember that I'm English.
Good times, huh?
Only 50%, Father. The other 50% is pretty good.
I know. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So, and it sounds mad, but like for me, sometimes I'm not aware I'm getting homesick, because I always thought it was about missing your mum, and actually homesickness is not that at all. It's about feeling culturally out of step. Chronically, like you learn an adaptation, but chronically out of step. And so, like for me, every now and again on St. George's Day, it happened because it's St. George's Day, England's patron saint. And so, I listen to Jerusalem, the hymn, and some old Mrs. Thatcher speeches or something like that. And I kind of, I'm bawling, but I'm healing. So, but I've got to do something. I think, once I recognize that I'm cycling down or I'm out of step, I've got to do something about it, and it requires energy of me and not of other people.
And that's why I was talking about you have to build your energy up, and that's your body. Your body has to carry you through your depression, and a lot of depressive moments, we don't eat, we don't drink, we don't drink the healthy things, and
Or we eat crap.
Yeah, we eat crap. We eat a bunch of sugar, which is all, and that's what our diets want us to be, is depressed. And so if we can go through and shift up how we are with ourselves, because I can tell you, since I've taken a lot of the sugars out of my diet, which I've been known to stick my finger in the sugar bowl, so I love my sugar. But at the same time, though, I'm noticing I'm staying at a different vibration because I'm not falling down the rabbit hole as much.
Yeah. It's important to keep physiologically mindful, I think. Even exercise, releasing those endorphins. That's how I do it. When I don't feel my best, I'll get on the treadmill and run for 45 minutes. And that releases so many endorphins that there's a true, not only a sense of well-being that comes after doing it, but there's also a sort of restfulness that you kind of carry with you the rest of the day. And I tend to sleep really well when I do get on that treadmill. Time is usually the only a barrier to doing it regularly. I'm usually too busy, but when I can focus on it or get up early enough to use it, don't underestimate physiological health. So yes, supplements, I can't say enough about that. I've never felt better in my life than when I started taking magnesium, a vitamin B complex, zinc, and D. And D, yes, D and vitamin, and I get a lot of sun too. I sit by the pool a lot, so I get a lot of natural D as well, and vitamin C, of course. Okay,
in
Brandon.
Australia, chronic vitamin D shortage is a major problem because we get skin cancer from the sun.
Yeah,
everyone wears
so
sunscreen
strong.
or stays in the shade, and you get vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah, see, isn't it bizarre? How that works? But see, you need that now. That's where my Italian skin comes in, because I can handle the sun pretty well.
Me too.
My skin's whiter than this T-shirt. So.
Yeah, you're like my wife, Tracy. She can't handle the sun at all. She goes out on on a stormy day and comes back with a burn. It's crazy. It's just the way she is.
Yeah, I'm so white. I'm blue. Yeah.
I have to be out all day in the sun with no protection at all to get even a slight color change. It's just I'm very resistant to the sun. Okay, Brandon, what's our next one?
So our next question, I think we kind of
can do one more. I think we can probably do one more. We got about maybe 3 minutes before I want Natasha to be able to give all of her information for anyone wanting to reach out to her.
Okay, this is from Mystic. Could an ancestor who was a multiple murderer create a curse through their actions?
Is your family cursed because they were evil? Is that the question?
Yeah, they can create.
Yeah.
It can create a mental mindset, and that is a curse in its energy field.
It behaves like one. Yeah.
It behaves like one. It's a signature of one. But no, it will not add a curse, but it can in a mindset that is set in a family. You have to start saying, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've started doing is I honor all my lifetimes and I honor my family's lifetimes. Thank you for being you, but it's time for me to be me. That's been one of my mantras lately is I honor my past and I honor the past of my family, but it's time for me to be me. And that's that in spite of it. Yeah. I'm doing it in spite of it. And we have to almost have that like, I don't want to call it ego, but ego is good if we use it to our empowerment. And so, because I'm willing to tell my ego to sit down, like a kid, sit down. We're not going to be doing that today. But when I really need that to do it in spite of, like when my naysayers in my life, and it's just not my husband, it's a lot out there because I'm one of the anomalies. I can't say that word, sorry. One of those people that just looks differently at life, and I'm not always liked about it. So with that, they're my naysayers.
Well,
I'm going to do it in spite of it.
In our current age, that's most people who are not existentialists, really. Anyone who thinks that there is more to life than, empiricism is anomalous in our culture. Obviously, only in the West. That's not true in sub-Saharan Africa, or
Yeah.
But so oftentimes, if you feel like you're a stranger, you think I just don't fit into this. Then
you don't.
It might not be because you need to fit in. It might be because
it's a good thing.
It's best you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Oh, well. That's another one of mine. Oh, well.
Well, Natasha, let's give a couple minutes here for you to just give the audience anything you want to tell them, any last words, and anything that you want to connect them to your social media, your websites, any ways that they can contact you, even maybe utilize some of your services, whatever you'd like to say.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me be here. I want to say that first of all.
Oh, thank you for coming.
I'm so grateful for all of you. You guys are all
absolutely enjoyable having you here.
We love having you on. I mean, you need to be a regular every season.
Anytime.
You got it. You got it.
So you can reach me at intuitiveclarifications.com. That's my website. I am also on social media, pretty much everywhere of the main ones. Natasha Venter IC. I thought that was kind of funny when I was told to change my website from angelic clarifications to intuitive clarifications, that it turned into IC.
Okay.
I like that.
the trick thing that the universe did for me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of my life calling is to support people through a lot of the questions and a lot of the stories that we're hearing tonight. And I get down into the 3D world of the trauma and the ick. I'm willing to look into darkness. I'm willing to see the darkness and hopefully bring light, but honoring your truth through the process, because it's you're the one who has to heal you. I'm just I'm the outside world looking in to help you. And so with that, I've had people who said, Natasha, I've gone to counseling for many, many years, and this hour has changed my world. So going into this, I really like to fulfill my life calling and to help people. So I do that through my videos on social media, and also through my sessions. I have multi-group sessions where I can help you go through, sometimes 1 hour doesn't help. And so I have like 4 sets of sessions. I also love to do group sessions. I do group medium sessions. I, at one time, had 12 women, and 7 of them have lost children. So that was interesting, doing a group mediumship with women who were grieving children. That was an amazing...
Fantastic.
Amazing day.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show and being here for our audience. And I hope our audience reaches out to you, because I think a lot of them could definitely benefit from what you have to offer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to remember, they were born a spark of a miracle. Please live your miracle.
You heard it. You heard it straight from Natasha's mouth. Next week, we will be dealing with Paranormal Investigation 101 with April Narad. She'll be back on the show to kind of talk about, the basics of paranormal investigation, the do's and the don'ts, perhaps, and that should be a really interesting time. Father Chris, thank you. Brandon, thank you. Jamie, thank you. Appreciate every one of you for spending your Tuesday evening with us here on Vestiges After Dark. We'll be back next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Paranormal Investigation. We hope to see you then. Until then, though, I will see you out there in the ether. God bless everyone.
Thanks, guys.